And hello, everybody. Good evening and happy Saturday. All I can say today is boom. Why do I say boom? Because that is the title of the chapter we're starting with. The chapter starts with boom. So, yeah. Thank you all for being here tonight. Glad to have you all here with us as we continue our reading of Spear of Destiny, Finding Bucephalus by Mary Lou Wells, edited by Kira Holiday. So, we made it through one whole chapter last time we read, which was Tuesday. And basically, our intrepid heroes, well, the ones of them that went along on this trip, have decided that the way to destroy the Spear of Chaos is to take it to Washington State. Anybody have a guess as to where in Washington State they might take it to destroy a spear that they have not been able to destroy elsewhere? So we have Brian, we have Diane, we have Kenneth, we have Mary Lou, we have the professor, who is in wolf form because the Spear of Chaos is around, and his protective wolf spirit has decided that he needs to be protected from the Spear of Chaos, as it should be because, well, it tried to kill him when they tried to destroy it the last time. And across the country, as they drove from Tennessee to Washington State, the Spear of Chaos did what its namesake said. It caused chaos. It caused a massive pileup on a highway and tried to kill them with a semi-truck. It tried to get police officers to come and investigate and, I don't know, pull out their gun and shoot our intrepid heroes. It has, well, it didn't do this, but we had a daemon come from the shadowy realms who should not have been able to come to Earth. But he did, and he came to try to get the spear. Well, the first time he was driven away from the gigantic scene of the car accident by a dragon. An elemental dragon who has been watching out for Mary Lou because Mary Lou has a little bit of an ability to play with the elements. And therefore, the dragon said that, or wanted to help to take care of her. And so RNL, the elemental spirit, the lightning dragon or the thunder dragon or the dragon, scared off the demon. The demon fled, but then it came back, and it attacked Mary Lou in the bathroom. Don't you know it's not nice to attack women in rest stop bathrooms? It's just not nice. It attacked her, and it did some nasty things to her. She, along with the help of Diane, were able to drive it away and drive it back to its own realm. However, not before Ictathir managed to attack Mary Lou, put a little bit of a hurtin' on her with a wound that could not be healed by traditional medical science. But they managed to make her okay once again. And so, Ictathir 0, our heroes too. 0, 2, however you want to do the hand signals. And so they have survived. Arnell is still watching out for them, but not anywhere that they could see it. And starting this chapter, we will find out what happens when they try to get rid of the spear in Mount St. Helens. Now, our story will be in 1986, so this is after Mount St. Helens exploded for a first time. Who knows what's going to happen, but again, the chapter is titled Boom! So, who knows what we are fixing to get here. As always, if you have not followed along with the entire story, it is available on the YouTube and Rumble channels for you to listen back in. Check it out. This is book 2, which means if you have not read book 1, you may be missing some things. So might I recommend that just stop out to Amazon, pick up book 1. While you're out there, you may as well just pick up book 2. You can still listen in. You can still watch the recorded chapters with me. But hey, why not just pick up the book? It seems like the right thing to do, doesn't it? Either way, let's make sure that we are supporting the author out here. And if you do get out there onto YouTube or Rumble and listen to the recorded chapters, make sure that you like, you comment, you subscribe. All of those things help me to get these out to an even larger audience, which you want them to be out to a larger audience. As just a small housekeeping matter to remind you guys, I do record all of the chapters, which means I don't interact with the audience during the chapter itself. But Mary Lou Wells happens to be out on the YouTube channel. You can stop out there and interact with her. Ask questions. She will be happy to answer, within reason. I will be happy to interact with each and every one of you that has questions, comments, concerns, anything else that you would like to know in between chapters. I do try to monitor the chat, and so I will be happy to interact with you as that goes. But you will have to wait and interact with me between chapters that way. But now, enough of Tim just talking at you guys. It's time for us to get into the story. So, sit back, relax, and prepare to enjoy. If you happen to be in a hot place, get yourself a cold drink. If you happen to be in a cold place, get yourself a hot drink. Grab a blanket if you want to. Put your feet up. Relax, get comfy, and let's get ourselves started as we will read into our next chapter, starting after I put a little bit of moisture in my mouth. Starting right now with 8. Boom. Wednesday to Thursday, May 7th to 8th, 1986, Mount St. Helens. Pink sunrise capped with gray clouds gave way to a clearing morning. The exhausted group finally pulled into the ranger station some distance from the volcano the next day. Brian and Diane decided to drive straight through Utah, Idaho, and southern Washington state with only brief rest breaks. Diane shook her fatigue off and went inside the Mount St. Helens Memorial Park Visitor Center to request a hiking permit. A short time later, she emerged carrying paperwork. Diane approached Brian's blue car and bent down to speak through his open window. "They aren't letting people near the mountain itself," she told them. Mostly geologists, park rangers, and the logging company that's replanting trees in the damaged areas. Brian nodded. Did you get what we need? Yeah, partly. Thanks to my credentials and records as a patrol officer and park ranger in Tennessee, I told them I'm here to research volcanic activity to make a plan for geological activity preparedness back east. She laughed. They didn't ask many questions, other than verifying my employment with the Park Service. That's a great idea, Dan, Kenneth said. He was out of the car and stretching in ways that made Brian wince. You should make a plan, and that way you didn't even lie. I'll do that, she replied with a smile. So, where do we go? Brian asked. I've made a map of the hiking areas. We've got to backtrack a little bit to a campground to satisfy their permit requirements. Pacific Core, a logging company, operates the nearest one. It's open from 6 in the morning to 9 in the evening. You can follow me there. Pretty sure I can find it, Diane told him. Diane waved the maps under Brian's nose. When we come back, we'll have to enter the volcano's trail system from the less damaged area to the south. We can park at the trailhead and hike. They're saying that the ash is deeper and unstable to the north side. Workers cleared the south road so it's passable. There's a trail to the summit. It's practically a straight shot up the mountain. Then we're good to go, Kenneth said from behind Diane. I think we better set up camp and rest today. We can make the trek tomorrow. I was thinking the same thing, Brian remarked. Very likely it's going to be a tough walk, and we have an injured party with us. She needs to rest someplace besides the car. We all do, Diane noted. We can start early in the morning. Okay, then. I'm ready when you are, Brian said. Diane led the way slowly while Kenneth consulted the map. They saw elk, birds, and the occasional small ground creatures as they drove. The human observers marveled at the lack of obvious devastation on the mountain's south side. Ahead of them, Dan slowed for a giant moose. It stepped out of the thick pine, cedar, and fir trees lining the road and wandered across the road in front of them. Its antlers were as wide as the road. Mary Lou's eyes grew big. Wow, that thing is huge. I've never seen one in real life. They'll mess up a car real quick, Brian told her. Worse than the white-tailed deer back home. I've heard tales of moose attacking tractor-trailer rigs with their antlers and totaling them. Yikes. I can believe it with the size of that one being about as tall as those young trees, she said. It's not acting aggressively, though. We'll steer clear of him. It'll be okay as long as we don't honk at him or get right up on his tail. Frank kept a cautious eye out for more animals after easing past the bull moose. They continued until a sign directed them to a clearing among the stately old-growth trees. They pulled into the Beaver Bay Recreation Area and then parked after they found a good camping place. Brian and Diane carefully looked around the campsite for a place to set up tents. Mary Lou followed slowly. She watched them let the coyote and the professor out of the car. The others talked in low tones while she wandered off a short distance by herself. She moved her shoulder gingerly and looked for a shady spot that would keep the sun off her tent during the heat of the day. Kenneth followed with her tent and bedroll. I thought you might want these. He grinned at her. I also thought you might need some help. Thanks. Yeah, my dome tent can be trickery and stubborn on a good day. Today my arm hurts. What about you? What are you sleeping in? Mary Lou looked at the single pack he carried. I'll be fine with a tarp, rope, and a bag, Kenneth told her. Mary Lou wrinkled her nose at him. Aren't you worried snakes and spiders might crawl in with you? The more, the merrier. He laughed at her skeptical tone. It's called camping. Mary Lou decided not to argue. Help would be needed setting up. I prefer my tent. Briefly, she considered inviting him to join her in a better shelter, but he was already running rope next to the spot she'd chosen. Okay, well, When you get your tent ready to put the poles in, let me know." Kenneth busied himself with his campsite. In the end, the coyote joined Kenneth in his makeshift shelter, with Brian to the other side in a low-profile tent. Diane set up a slightly larger cabin tent next to Mary Lou. The professor indicated he was content to bunk with Diane on a pile of soft blankets next to her cot. It didn't take long for Mary Lou to hear snoring sounds coming from nearby. The chirping of birds and the ability to stretch out on her bedroll soon lulled her to sleep. By late afternoon, everyone started to stir. Diane was building a campfire when Kenneth joined her. "Did any snakes come to say hello?" Diane asked him, amused. "No, but I do have a spider moving in and making herself at home," he said with a slight smile. When Mary Lou joined them, they were both drinking coffee. She declined when Diane produced a third cup and offered it to her. "No thanks." She huddled next to the fire with a blanket wrapped around her and shivered slightly. The peace of their surroundings seemed to seep into her awareness. It was an odd contrast to the previous days. It's awfully quiet, isn't it?" Mary Lou said. She pulled her knees to her chin, and her eyes were half shut. "Oh, my God, shut up!" Kenneth exclaimed, making her jump. "It's almost like you're trying to bring the sky down on us. Oh, wait, you already did that." "She wasn't exactly at fault for that," Diane observed. "She was delirious and in pain." "Maybe so, but why jinx it? It's a beautiful day. Let's let it go with that," Kenneth replied with a good-natured sideways glare. "I didn't mean—" Mary Lou's reply was interrupted by noise from Brian's campsite. "Are you okay over there?" Diane called out to Brian. "Yep, just getting a visit from Ken's spiders. I've got Granddaddy Longlegs all over the outside of my tent," he called back and stuck his head out of his tent door. "I was smacking 'em off. Hey, Ken, I need to visit the men's room. You want to head over with me?" "Yeah, a buddy system. Nobody is going anywhere alone till we do the deed like we agreed." He nodded toward the cars and was deliberately vague. "It's too dangerous," Kenneth replied. "Anybody else?" Brian bounced on his toes. "I'm good," Diane said. "I'll stay here with Diane. I went earlier," Mary Lou replied. "At least we're in a good mood. You can cheer Ken up." "I'm not in a bad mood," Kenneth told her as he set his cup down and stood up. "I just don't want you hurt again." He patted her on the head as he passed and headed off with Brian. Surprised, she closed her mouth on any reply. Mary Lou went to her tent to hide the sudden emotional reaction that she didn't fully understand. Her eyes lit on her cooler. "Food would be good," she said to herself. Clumps of ice made rummaging for hot dogs and cheese in the cooler a challenge. Going back and forth to the fire pit, she fetched skewers for cooking. When the guys returned, Mary Lou and Diane were cooking a meal for the group. The professor, resigned to wolf form until they were rid of the spear on the morrow, snuggled close to Diane and tried to look as dog-like as possible while he waited for food. Their coyote companion stared Mary Lou down till she pulled a steaming piece of meat off her skewer and fed it to him. "You're getting spoiled, my friend," Mary Lou giggled. "Totally taken advantage." "Yep," the coyote told her and stamped his feet. The eager look on his face made the teen giggle again. "Fine, you can have another one, sir, but I get to eat the next one after that," she admonished. After she had eaten her fill, Mary Lou found herself pacing around their campsite. Unable to sit still, she moved her shoulders and found that the soreness was gradually going away. Brian noticed her looking at the marks on her skin. He went to where she was standing beside a sign that designated a trailhead. "Don't worry, I'm not wandering off by myself," she told him before he could ask. "I was just curious how far it is from here to where we're going, and how steep a climb it is. This sign doesn't seem to give that information." "This isn't the right trail, but I didn't think you were going to hike alone. You were looking restless, and I thought I'd come check on you. How's the shoulder?" Healing a lot faster than I would have thought, she told him. See? Even the red marks are fading out and the skin is closed. Whatever that thing was that you encountered, it did a doozy on you, Brian said. He examined the wound and nodded in satisfaction. But it's looking a lot better now. For a few minutes, I thought we were going to lose you. Ken was practically beside himself. He gave her a piercing look. Is there something you'd like to tell me? He grinned mischievously. Puzzled, Mary Lou shook her head. No, there's nothing to tell. Huh. Okay, Brian said with a wink. But you two would make a cute couple. As if. She rolled her eyes and shrugged. She thought back to the prom night disaster the year before. He doesn't even like me much. No guys ever do. You might be surprised, Brian told her seriously. Maybe you just don't give them a chance. You give all the wrong signals. Hell, I'd date you. You're cute, smart, and totally sexy when you're mad. Her eyes were wide as she stared at him. Excuse me? Cute? Huh. See? Just like that. He laughed at her, retreating back. At least now you aren't feeling sorry for yourself, he muttered when she couldn't hear him. And you'll never give me a chance, girl. You're smitten with him and won't admit it. Everybody sees it but you two. Brian shook his head and followed her. When he reached the others, Mary Lou had plopped herself, predictably, right beside Kenneth. She glared at Brian, but he grinned back at her unmoved. Diane and Kenneth remained unaware of the emotional subtext going on beside them. Their attention had turned to making plans for the hike to the still intact portion of Mount St. Helens Peak. It'll be rough going, Diane was saying. She held up the map so Kenneth and Brian could see. We start here. She tapped the map. Then we'll end up here. This is where we are at right now. Her brown finger moved across the lines on the map. Off of 81 and south right now. I see it. Kenneth was on his knees. He stared intently at the markings and placed his own finger on the map. According to this, we need to head northeast. We go back past the ranger outpost there, and that should be the start of our trek. We enter the trail way before this path that looks like it goes around the mountain, Kenneth said. They call that Lowit Trail, and, yeah, it goes all the way around, Diane agreed. The trail existed before the big eruption 6 years ago. Parts of it are still largely obliterated, but we'll only see that in passing because our goal is to go up the slope. Did they give some idea of what to expect? Mary Lou interrupted. Yeah, they did, Diane nodded. There's basically 3 legs of the trail, and it's not well marked. The bottom part's old-growth forest. That's a relatively easy walk. The second part is a boulder field, and the top is fine ash, almost like sandy dunes on the slopes. There's going to be a lot of slipping and sliding. We'll be stirring up ash everywhere we step. How far is it? Brian asked. A little over 9 miles from the access point, which is a bit more distant than a logging road that dead ends there. Diane answered him. It probably depends on how many detours we end up taking. I figure if we leave the campground right after the gates open, and if we start walking around 7 in the morning, we can probably be up there at the top around noon or 1 o'clock. Kenneth sat back on his heels. Piece of cake, he said as he nodded agreement. Sounds like a plan to me. Mary Lou looked around at her companions. She hesitantly asked a question that was really on her mind. Is it safe? At the top, I mean. Kenneth read her trepidation in the direction of her thoughts. It's a bit late for that, don't you think? I mean, given that we came halfway across the country to make this hike, we are committed. Whatever happens, just happens. We are here for the lava, so... He trailed off, looking Mary Lou squarely in the eyes. That's not all you're worried about, is it? No, not everything, she hesitated. I go hiking with my dad up in the Smoky Mountains a lot. It's steep, but not as steep as this. I usually have a tough time somewhere on the trail with my asthma bothering me. I'm also worried I'll slow us down. Maybe I should stay here and camp? He finished her sentence for her. With the dogs, if necessary, she told him, and looked apologetically at the two canines. We'll not be leaving anyone behind, Diane told her firmly. Exactly right, Brian said. Well, the mountain may be dangerous. We already agreed not to leave anybody alone. Bad things tend to happen when we do. Kenneth looked sympathetic, but didn't back down. Agreed, he said. We will go at whatever pace we need to. You are physically fit enough that you should be able to make it. I've seen your determination when you make up your mind, and you're going to do something. He laughed a little. She smiled at him. Very true. But seriously, don't fail to let us know if you get into trouble. You tend to try to hide it, and we can't afford for you to do that out here. You have to be able to get down the mountain under your own steam after you climb. Okay? Kenneth asked her. Yes, she told him. Diane broke back into the conversation. Pace yourself and don't push past what you can do, though. Heroics are one thing, but the back country won't forgive mistakes, she said. You'll go with us in the morning. I'll watch her, Brian spoke up. If it comes to that, Diane, you and Ken can go on ahead. I'll stay with her if she falls behind. There's an inhaler in my med kit. It's a new thing they've come out with for asthma. She can carry that with her if it gets bad. Mary Lou looked around at all of them gratefully. Thank you. No problem, Brian told her. May 8th, 1986. Here and there, new-growth trees or flowers dotted the ruined landscape and filled the ditches where erosion had exposed the soil enough for new life to sprout among the ash. An overlay of gray dulled everything near Mount St. Helens, a sobering reminder that the mountain ahead was not as calm as it seemed. They skirted most of the worst of the damage left by the 1980 eruption, parked, and headed into the green forest with their gear. Kenneth led the way carrying the Spear of Chaos. Diane went second with the professor and the coyote ranging to either side of Diane with Mary Lou behind her. This area has made a lot of progress toward recovery in 6 years, Mary Lou remarked to Brian after they'd walked for a while. It's beautiful. I didn't expect to find so much life here. This mountain didn't kill everything nearly the way I thought it did from seeing it on television. You're right, Brian agreed. In 50 years, you may not know it ever erupted. That's assuming it doesn't blow its top again before that. Let's not dwell on that part since we're walking up the side of it today. Mary Lou laughed a little, but she eyed the mountain looming ahead of them. Rather than comment further, she concentrated on walking. Brian, designated to bring up the rear, dropped back and left her with her thoughts. She could hear the jingle of his carabiners which dangled from a length of coiled rope he carried. She remembered what he said when he pulled them out at home. Rappelling gear for added safety in case we need it up top, or somebody slips in a difficult place, Brian had told her when he packed for the hike. I've seen the drone and aircraft footage. We also might need it to get into the crater. All of us? Mary Lou had asked in dismay. I don't know how to rappel. He grinned at her response. No, likely just Ken. But I want the option to pull him out this time and not leave him stuck like he was in the river at the dam. He has a harness in his pack. Nice. You guys are way ahead of the plan. I didn't think about that, she'd said. With her mind back in the present, Mary Lou examined the scenery. The first couple of miles were eaten away by their steady progress. As they moved along the footpath, the trees grew sparser. They were also smaller the higher they went. Songbirds flitted among the branches, and a chipmunk looked for seeds among the rocks. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted. Pebbles crunched under her feet. Loose volcanic ash was everywhere. At the end of the tree line, boulders and large pumice rocks marred the side of the mountain. Climbing became more difficult. They called a halt to rest before tackling the minefield of stones above them. Diane shared a drink with the two canines and left the professor sniffing a tall stand of weeds to check on Mary Lou. She plopped bonelessly on a rock next to the girl where she could get a view of the horizon peeking through the treetops. "The view will only get better from here," Diane remarked. She noted that the teen was breathing heavily, but was still calm. "I can hardly wait to see it," Mary Lou agreed. "Except for the mountains. It all looks so flat and blue, almost like a big land ocean." "When you make it to the top of this mighty hill, you'll be above the level of the clouds and looking down on 'em." Diane smiled. Mary Lou eyed the trail ahead dubiously. "Hopefully, I'll make it," she said. You will, don't worry," a deeper voice said from behind them. Brian joined them on their rock. "You've made it this far, and even though it's been slow going, you're still with us." He rummaged in his pack and handed her a trail mix bar. "For energy," he told her. "But remember to use the inhaler I gave you when your chest starts feeling tight." "Thanks," Mary Lou said gratefully and accepted the snack. "Looks like the next stretch has a lot of loose rock," Diane observed. "We're all going to have to pace ourselves, not just you." Whatever else Diane was about to say was lost in the noise from above them near the trail. "What's that?" Kenneth exclaimed near where the noise arose. "What on earth is he doing?" Diane asked when she joined him. "John's going crazy." "Oh, wow. Is Medicine Bear eating that bush or trying to mate with it? I can't tell." Mary Lou's eyes were wide. "He looks like a cat who has found the best catnip ever." As they watched, the normally sedate and dignified college professor wallowed aggressively and chewed on the tall plants he'd found earlier. Since he looked like a wolf, it just made the situation seem more surreal. "Brian, you come out here every summer during wildfire season. Got any idea what the herb is that he's going crazy over?" Diane asked. "It looks like fireweed, but the flower color and size is way off," Brian told her. "It has a sweet smell usually, and the flowers taste like honey. When it dries up, it burns like crazy, although some people make herb sachets out of it to make their clothes smell good. Given the way he's acting, I'd say it's pretty tasty." Diane waved at her mentor and his unfortunate circumstance. The professor as wolf was clawing at a tree now and growling and rolling all over it. As they watched, he left a huge gash in the bark of a fir tree. When he finally looked at the group, the wolf's eyes were glassy. The spear, awakened from its self-imposed quiet during the commotion, pushed at the professor but found its way blocked. Puzzled, it withdrew into itself and tried again to slide into the mind of the wolf. It found the emotions and psyche of the spirit wolf and the human mind guarded by it, but were both beyond its reach. Angry, it turned on Kenneth, who had laid the spear beside it himself to get a drink and a snack. "Blood," it whispered to him. "Hungry. Kill the beast and eat. Unnatural." Kenneth found himself on his feet with the spear in his hand before he caught himself and threw the spear down. He addressed the coyote who watched the professor with ears pricked nearly to touching. "God, this bloody stick," Kenneth told to him. "It's up to its old tricks. It don't control me. I do." "What are you going to do?" Brian asked him. "End this." Kenneth clenched his jaw. He felt an overpowering urge to kill the wolf with his bare teeth, but he was aware of the spear's influence. The coyote stood over the spear, growling with hackles raised as the artifact attempted to manipulate him into attacking as well. He snarled louder, but the avatar of Coyote held his place. Kenneth went to the wolf, but instead of harming him, grabbed him firmly by the ruff and pinned him down. Under the boy's hand, the spirit wolf gained a sense of relief due to a magical effect blocking the spear's influence. Shay's spirit partly relaxed. The professor began to shift back to human flesh and bone, but got stuck partway as a result. Brian couldn't hold back a snarky comment. See? I told you! Werewolf! Mary Lou and Diane simultaneously realized what was happening. The fireweed, Diane said, snapping her fingers. I think so, too. It's caused him to shapeshift back, and the spear isn't stopping it, Mary Lou said. This is great. We just found something that works. Something needs to, Kenneth said vehemently, then muttered under his breath. Well, crap. Dude, that ain't a fig leaf. That's a handful of grass. And now we got another problem. Diane shook her head. No, Brian, he's not a werewolf. He's not cursed. He's blessed. Brian looked puzzled. How do you figure that? I wouldn't even consider turning into a wolf a blessing. Because he doesn't desire blood, and he, for the most part, retains his mind. The moon phase has no hold on him. Despite what we see with our eyes or the skinwalker legend, it's protection in his case. The only thing we don't know is whether it's a permanent effect or just temporary, Diane replied. Does anyone have an extra bag? Mary Lou asked, oblivious to the conversation. I'm going to grab all this plant stuff I can carry, she declared. Technically, that's illegal in the park, but given the circumstances, I'm right there with you, Diane agreed. An extra bag? How about some extra clothes? Kenneth raised his hands and waved to get their attention. A naked werewolf problem here, guys. Oh, not me, Mary Lou said. I've just got my light raincoat rolled up in my pack, although it's extra big and might fit if he doesn't mind a big orange UT poncho. Yeah, call attention to the werewolf. That won't get us shot at, Brian commented sarcastically. That's all kinds of wrong, Kenneth agreed, but he laughed despite the awkwardness of the situation. Hey, it wasn't my idea, Mary Lou said sheepishly. My mom's the big UT fan. Mom insisted I take it when I left. I look horrible in bright orange. Don't you worry, you guys. I got it covered, Diane told them. I always bring extra in case it rains and I get wet. I bring 'em extra large to put on over my outer layer. I'm pretty sure they'll fit. At least long enough to get this done and get out of here. With the jumbled boulder field was comfortably exposed and strenuous to the climbers, the view became increasingly impressive the higher they went. Vegetation didn't grow this far up the slope of the volcano. Nothing blocked their view of the surrounding blue field of hilltops. Sharp, snow-covered peaks punctuated the scene in a flat panorama as distant as the eye could see. Sightseeing gave the teens an excuse for frequent stops to let Mary Lou catch her breath without seeming to slow the group too much. However, she became daunted by the footing about a mile from the top. The terrain changed from pumice boulders of all sizes to fine ash and coarse pebbles that shifted underfoot and weighed them down like trying to walk on dry sand. It made upward progress far more difficult. Slipping and fighting not to glide backward downslope, they finally reached the summit of Mount St. Helens in the early mid-afternoon and stopped. This is absolutely breathtaking up here, Brian said enthusiastically, hopping up and down when he finally reached the rim of the volcano. We're standing on one of the three sisters, and you can see the other two. Wow! Look, over there's Mount Rainier, and there's Mount Hood in the distance. Yeah, it's pretty, Mary Lou barely managed to say, breathing hard and bent over. Her legs were shaking badly enough that she found herself wondering how Brian could still be so bouncy. It almost annoyed her, but she was too busy trying to get enough air to glare at him. Kenneth watched Mary Lou, concerned, but didn't say anything. Instead, he considered how best to approach the problem of finally getting rid of the spear. He crouched down with his head in his hand to consider the terrain. His warm amber-brown eyes took in every detail. A heavy sigh came from Diane. "I don't see any help for it. Somebody's got to go in. It's too far to throw it from here." Diane also looked at the interior of the volcano, considering the options. "Now that we're here and can actually see it, I'd say what the aerial footage seemed to show was pretty accurate." "Obviously," Kenneth said. "There's no other way to reach a lava shaft." "What are you gonna do?" Diane asked. "Get rid of this thing for good this time," Kenneth said firmly. "It worked for Frodo with the ring. Why not with the artifact of the undead asshole?" "I know that. What I mean is how you getting close enough to be effective. There's a lava dome building up in there, probably where a central vent lies underneath. It's gonna be hot." Diane raised an eyebrow. "This isn't a ring. It's sure enough better work," she finished with a mutter. Her stress was bringing out her southern black girl accent. Diane couldn't help feeling uneasy and gave the spear a stern look. "I'll go down there and just do it. Get close, put the thing in, and the mountain will take care of melting it down. Simple, and we can all go home in peace," Kenneth told her, squinting up at her into the sun. "At least that's the plan." Brian stopped a short distance away and pointed. "There and there. I see possible tie-off points for the ropes depending on how hot it might be. That will be close to the opposite end of the caldera from where we're standing." "Okay, I see," Diane trailed off. "That rock looks big enough to hold the weight of 2 people on the ropes if we need to double up." "We'll hope we don't have to," Brian said. He was all business as quickly and efficiently tied the ropes off. Then he helped Kenneth get his harness settled. "All right, let's do this thing," Kenneth said. When he turned around with his back to the volcano's interior, he grabbed the rope firmly, and his eyes met Mary Lou's. She caught her breath when she saw the worried expression in his eyes. It didn't match the surety in his voice. "Go back," he told her firmly. "Start now and don't look back. Don't come for me." His voice changed to a deeper, serious timbre. "You don't need to be up here for this." "I'm not leaving you, and I just got here," she told him softly. "Why does it seem like we've been here, had this conversation before?" Mary Lou wondered. A profound sense of familiarity made the situation seem surreal. "I don't understand." Kenneth took a deep breath and blew it out slowly. Brian started to interject, but swallowed what he was about to say. Diane realized something was passing between the 2 teens on a deeper level and stayed silent. "It's simple. You don't need to be up here," Kenneth tried to reason with her. "There's nothing you can do, and if something happens, you'll have a head start." "But—" She opened her mouth to speak, but he cut her off. "Just go," Kenneth demanded. "No, I don't want to," Mary Lou insisted. "Oh, my God, girl, why not?" Kenneth gave an exasperated sigh. "Because I'm afraid you won't come back. Because I'm more scared of that than anything, and I don't know why." Mary Lou shook her head. "You might need me," she settled for saying, embarrassed that she couldn't articulate the real problem and didn't think he wanted to hear it. "I'm pretty sure I can take care of this myself," he told her. "You and Diane head back. Brian and I will finish up here and join you back at home camp." "But—" she objected. "Now!" Kenneth practically yelled at Mary Lou. "If you don't, I'll knock you out and have Brian carry you back down the mountain. How would you like that?" "That's a bit extreme there, bud, but okay." Brian eyed Mary Lou. "You ready?" "I can walk," she objected. Then off you go. Kenneth gestured to their back trail. I got shit to do. The girl followed Diane back the way they'd come with a defeated sigh. Going down was much faster than going up, they found. Loose ash and pebbles moved and shifted under their feet, causing them to slide in places. The two canines slid most of the way on their bellies. Professor Holderman looked like he was sledding, sending drifts of ash into the air. They waited for the slower members of their party when the ground solidified into the boulder field. I have a bad feeling we better pick up the pace, Diane said. We ain't got time to be pretty about it. Watch a fallen rock and don't stop. The four of them moved as quickly as they could. The professor and the coyote led the way. A growing sense that the mountain could fall on them any second made their progress more urgent. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea after all, Diane said as she climbed over more rocks. Though it's maybe a little late for buyer's remorse. Yeah, was all Mary Lou said, short of breath and struggling not to show it. She looked over her shoulder at the top of the mountain with a worried expression. Come on, guys, get out of there. She tried to will them to appear, but saw no sign of anyone else coming down behind them. She caught her breath when she saw smoke and ash begin to billow in a sky-high plume above them. No, she whispered, horrified. Diane noticed too. Uh-oh, she exclaimed. Go, go! We've got all the head start we're gonna get, she urged. They felt the rumble beneath their feet before they heard the faint sound from further up the mountain. Move! Diane yelled. They ran for their lives. At the top of the mountain, Kenneth and Brian struggled as the caldera's interior broke loose and started to collapse under Kenneth's feet. It started slowly, but gradually increased its momentum. As cracks appeared, large chunks of ash shifted. Kenneth relied on the rope to keep from being swept into the hot sludge. It was turning into a mud flow at the lava vent where he had just plunged the spear of chaos. Steam and smoke boiled out of the vent. Die, bitch! Kenneth gritted his teeth and grinned savagely, showing fangs. Good riddance! He coughed as the smoke and sulfur clouds thickened around him. The toxic gases emanating from the hole began to make him dizzy. In response, Kenneth took a hand-over-hand approach to pull himself up the rope. Brian also hauled on the rope from where he stood on the volcano's rim. Not so fast, warrior, a heavily accented female voice said calmly. What makes you think you can mess with my volcano without permission and get off so easy? Kenneth jumped, startled. He looked around and tried to peer through the smoke to find out who was talking to him. Who's there? I am Pele, the rightful guardian of this mountain. A tall, willowy figure in a red and orange flowing dress appeared through the smoke. Where she walked over the flowing sludge, it cooled and hardened. Her golden-brown hair flowed in the breeze under a wreath of pink flowers. Another myth walking around, Kenneth said, nonplussed. Why should I be surprised at this point? Do I look like a myth? Pele smiled. Now, quit changing the subject, warrior. You are here causing trouble, and if I don't mitigate the damage, people will die today. Therefore, I require your help. My help? I am helping by melting down that thrice-accursed spear Loki's spawn made. Noble intent, perhaps. Poor execution, Pele replied at the mention of Loki. You must find another way. She held her hand out toward the vent. It puffed and then popped violently as a gas bubble escaped, carrying the spear with it far into the air, only to disappear from sight in the roiling smoke and ash. Stronger lava flows followed that carried melted snow and ash sludge along with them. What did you just do? Kenneth demanded, alarmed. The mountain was not scheduled to erupt today. I am charged by our Heavenly Father with dominion over the lake of fire. A tool of chaos in my volcanoes renders them unpredictable and dangerous. It is not time for them to all go off at once. I must insist you not do this. Pele was still smiling. You crazy, Kenneth declared. Or am I talking to a spirit? He was still slowly being dragged upward, but he resumed pulling himself up by hand. There are innocents out and about, warrior. Because of your actions, they have no advance information provided by the instruments on these slopes. You must give them warning of what you have seen here. Kenneth thought about that for a moment. What about the people that died 6 years ago? He said, then stopped as the gravity of the situation brought another question. How bad is it? He asked. I am shifting things beneath the mountain to hold back the worst of the pressure to avoid a full eruption. Though I do love a good boom, Pele purred. You will be lucky for it only to be a small lava flow, but there will be some unavoidable heat buildup in Dish. Yeah, I've noticed. Kenneth looked down at himself. Sweat stuck his clothes to his skin. His face was wet and dripping from the heat. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to leave. I can't call anybody standing around up here, he said. Pele watched calmly as the teen made it to the vertical part of his climb. The rope, which was also suffering the effects of the heat, frayed and broke under his weight. She reached out and caught him by the wrist in a vice grip before he could fall into the flowing lava below them. 6 years ago, they had plenty of warnings and chose of their own free will to ignore them. Today, without warning, further death are up on you. Now, up you get. She tossed him easily to within a couple of feet below the rim where Brian had been panicking about losing his friend to the erupting volcano. Oh, hell, Brian said. I don't want to know how you just did that, but grab this and grab my hand. I think it's time to go. I take it you getting rid of the spear is why it's belching all kinds of mess down there? Yeah, well, you see, about that. Kenneth grabbed for the offered assistance and sucked in his breath when Brian grabbed his wrist in the same place where Pele had seized it. Ow, that smarts. What? Oh, crap, Ken, you're burned, Brian exclaimed as he saw his friend's wrist after he'd helped him to his feet. Hey, that looks like a handprint. No time for that, Kenneth snarled through gritted teeth. Let's go. He preferred to avoid potentially lengthy explanations for the time being. Brian and Kenneth quickly slid and clambered their way down into the forest below on the south side slope of the volcano, trying to put distance between themselves and the top of the mountain. They were too busy moving to talk to one another until they were close to the place they'd chosen to meet up with their companions in the forest. Diane had her arms crossed and tapped her toe when the two out-of-breath teens made it back. Her stormy expression as they approached was explained by the presence of the Spear of Chaos, jabbed point first and hilt deep in the ground beside her. Her dark brown eyes stared a hole in the two guys as they breathlessly approached. What in the name of Sam hell is this? Diane shouted at them. I thought this was supposed to be up there in the volcano, not down here trying to go home with us again. What did we come all this way for? Brian stared at Diane and the Spear of Chaos in confusion. We did leave it up there, he told her. He just randomly dropped out of the sky while we were waiting for you. Mary Lou shook her head. We need an explanation. What happened? I'm not sure you'd believe me if I told you, Kenneth began. Try me, mister, Diane demanded. You see, there was this girl, he tried to say. Uh-huh. Diane's eyes narrowed. Don't give me no cockamamie bullshit story. I didn't drive no 2,500 miles to get a story about a girl. Got enough girls chasing you all over Kingston. Try again. No, for real, he tried to interject. What girl? Brian and Mary Lou asked at the same time. Kenneth drew himself up to his full height and glared back. Maybe if you'd quit interrupting me, I can tell you guys. He huffed irritably. Okay, short version is, I got close enough to real lava I was able to put the spear into an opening. The mountain decided to go boom when I did. Then Pele showed up. She removed the spear and told me to get off her mountain. End of story. The volcano goddess? Mary Lou's eyes were wide. I'm not sure exactly what she is, he answered. She's some kind of spirit because she was walking on the red-hot lava. Not a goddess. Kenneth recognized a lilting voice as the girl in question spoke to them. I am a helper, although men have called me a goddess before. I have dominion anywhere the lake of fire rises to the surface. Pele. Kenneth turned around and nodded to her respectfully. Pele sat serenely on a boulder among the trees. They noticed she was barefoot, an odd contrast to the flowing flame-colored dress she wore. She sat with her arms around her knees with her feet crossed. I do have a question, though. Why did you throw this artifact in my mountain? Pele asked. She rose and approached the group. What made you decide to drive 2,500 miles, as you put it, to come here today? Loki doesn't typically play with fire. There's a book series. It's about an evil magic ring, and the only way to destroy it is to throw it in the volcano where it was forged, Mary Lou explained. We have tried literally everything else, so we thought we'd put it into a volcano with fire hot enough to melt it down. You took the advice of someone else's fantasy, I see. Pele sighed. If it were anything else, it would have been destroyed. But though the fountain of youth also waters it, the very deepest roots of the world tree drink from the lake of fire. Gehenna gives it strength, Pele told them. So what does that have to do with the spear? Kenneth asked. The spear's power comes from the sacred made profane. Its shaft was crafted from the wood of the world tree itself, and then it was forged in blood. I can hear the cries of the souls it has stolen. Then it's all useless. Mary Lou's face fell. What do we do now? Not quite, Pele told them. There is always a way. All that is made can be unmade. I have already pushed my authority farther than I should have this day. It is not my place to tell you what is in the case. The Prime Creator, however, has interest due to the innocence involved. He always watches and knows. He will make sure of a proper conclusion, however long it takes. So we get more cryptic messages and no help? Kenneth glared at her. I went all the way up there, got burned nearly to a crisp, only to have you spit it back out and tell us there's a way, but not what? Diane gave Mary Lou a sideways glance. The other girl's shoulders drooped, and her expression was pained. Girl, when did you become such a Debbie Downer, huh? You're always the one giving us pep talks lately. We ain't giving up, Diane told her firmly. Sorry, Diane, Mary Lou sighed. It's all good. Diane waved her hand dismissively. You've been through it all this trip, so it's understandable. We better keep our heads up and looking though, 'cause it ain't over yet. I am sorry for the burn, Pele said to Kenneth softly. I brought you some fresh aloe from my island as a gift. It will soothe your wrist. If you had fallen, it was the only way I could keep you from the lake of fire. Even immortality could not have saved you then. Is that why you came back? Kenneth asked as he took the offered plant. Just so, Pele said with a smile. Then I thank you, Kenneth said formally, and inclined his head to the Lady of Fire. He used a stem of aloe on his burn. It stung at first, but then the pain of the fire lessened. The handprint was already faded when he kept his promise to radio the Park Service about the eruption. When the warnings began to crackle out over the airwaves, they piled in the cars and returned to camp. Pele walked off. By the time the people looked around again, she was no longer visible. She chose to wander quietly for a time through the forest when she happened upon an enormous red cat sitting beside the path. It didn't matter to the cat that Pele was in her spirit form. The cat watched her with its tail flipping slowly. He looked faintly like a lynx or a desert cat with thick tabby stripes and spots, but it was shaped like an Abyssinian, much larger, heavier cousin. Pele stopped to greet the cat. "Hello there." She bent down and held her hand out, palm up. "It is always a pleasure, bless you, met." The red cat purred and approached. It bumped Pele's hand. A spark flew between them, but neither of them was fazed. When Pele stood up, the cat wound around her feet, rubbing up against her. "You are guarding them well. I approve," Pele told the cat. "I sense great danger, but they have a worthy cause. At least they aren't likely to throw what they carry into a volcano again." "Meow," the red cat agreed. "Okay, then, off you go." Pele laughed joyfully as the red cat sauntered off and left her alone in the forest. The spirit faded into the shadows at the base of the mountain. The trees and the wildlife were peacefully left to their own devices. Kitty! We like a good kitty cat. What's new, pussycat? Whoa, whoa, whoa. What's new, pussycat? Whoa, whoa, whoa. Pussy cat, I love you. Yes, I do. Okay, that's enough of that. So, we have found, and so this is going to be funny to some of you guys. I chat with the author before most of the streams, and she's like, "Hey, are you excited for what's coming up?" I said, "I have an idea of what's coming up." I haven't read ahead. Any of you guys who've been with my streams for a while know that I don't read ahead because I like to engage in the story with you guys. And so I was just joking around saying, "Yep, the dragon is going to come back with Alexander on its back, and they're going to destroy the Spear of Chaos by throwing the ring in the volcano before Sauron gets it." Little did I know we were going to reference that very book in the chapter itself. Oh, so it absolutely cracked me up. Oh, sometimes you just guess right. Oh, I love it. It makes me happy. So there we go. We have a nice little Lord of the Rings reference in the book itself. So fantastic. And then we get to encounter another goddess-like creature, Pele, as we went in there. So that was fun. Hey, again, sometimes I can just guess correctly, just being the wild smartass that I am. I love it. It made me happy. And then, of course, for those of you guys who are familiar, we have seen a red cat in this book before. You're going to have to go back and read back to see where we have heard and seen a red cat before. One little note to the author. There is a spot in here where Mount St. Helens, is spelled with two L's. I catch these things as I go through because I have to read every word as I read them to you guys. So sometimes I see those things. Um, so at least on my version, I see it that way. Granted, my version could be messed up because sometimes weird things happen when I pull them into, the Kindle app and things like that. But There we go. One thing that I've learned, as some of you guys may know, I'm writing my own book. First draft is done. I'm going back through, and a book is never truly 100% complete. You will always find something somewhere in there that you didn't expect to find. It has become obvious for me that that is the case at times. So you can edit it as closely as you want to. You could have 800,000 people read through it, and there's still going to be something that comes up. It's a fact of the world, guys, and I've seen it in the best bestsellers and everything. So it just cracks me up. I just happen to know that our author is here with us on YouTube. Make sure you guys stop over to YouTube and say hello. She is probably on the vertical YouTube, not the horizontal YouTube. Yes, I have two YouTube streams running. Um, so there we go. But stop over and say hello because why not? All right, let me go ahead and take another drink here, and then we'll get back into our next chapter. All right, here we go. With 9 awkward surprises. May 9th, 1986. I came prepared. Mary Lou grinned exuberantly. Her hands were full of packs of hot dogs, smoked sausages, buns, and giant marshmallows, accompanied by a box of graham crackers. A stack of chocolates balanced beneath her chin. The entire precarious arrangement wobbled as she walked. We can have a feast tonight before we head out in the morning, she announced, her eyes sparkling with good cheer. Here, let me help with some of that before you drop it all. Diane reached out just as the teen started losing hold of half of what she carried. I wouldn't mind some s'mores. Something sweet would be great. Diane smiled too. Her teeth flashed white in the firelight that flickered against the backdrop of the darkening campground. With a subdued appearance of the sun that was fading in the distance, light layers of ash high in the atmosphere gave everything a red glow. Ah, thanks, Diane. Whew, I was afraid it would all fall, Mary Lou told her with relief. What's got you in such a good mood all of a sudden? Kenneth asked. He glanced sourly toward the volcano. I thought about what Pele and Diane said yesterday, so I'm going to try to be the positive person. We are going to see this problem through, so we just have to find the answer since there is one, Mary Lou told him. Here, have some food and a roasting fork. The girl tossed him and Brian both a pack of hot dogs each and shared out the tools. She then sat down on the other side of the fire beside Diane. So, that's what you had in that big cooler of yours. Those forks will hold more food than the skewers. Thank you, Brian said to Mary Lou. He turned the fork over in his hands, examining it before he pulled the tines to full length and speared 2 hot dogs. He scooted close to the fire and got them close enough to the flame that they immediately started searing. Diane's ones were nearly done, so she moved to give Brian room. Yeah, well, it's not camping without dogs and s'mores, Mary Lou said agreeably. Since this is our last night, I figured, why not splurge a little and have a marshmallow roast? Oops, I forgot plates. Does anybody need one? I have some in my tent. That sounds good, Diane said around a mouthful of food. I need a place to set these down. They're hot. Ow, ow! She fanned her mouth awkwardly and blew air through pursed lips. Okay, give me a sec. She got up smoothly from a cross-legged position and walked off. Brian opened up his own thermal box and rattled around in the ice. Ah, something cold and wet. That's the ticket. Ken, you want a wine cooler? You look like you need to unwind a little. Yeah, sure, I'll take one, Kenneth told him and took the offered bottle that Brian opened for him. Diane, you? He also offered her one. Nah, I'm good. You two go ahead. I got my Pepsi, she answered. So, what are you thinking, bro? You've been mostly quiet since yesterday afternoon. Brian sipped his brew and looked intently at Kenneth. When you're this quiet, you always have something up your sleeve. Just then, Mary Lou returned with a stack of plates and handed Diane one. The rest Mary Lou laid down. She prepped her food, then settled in and listened quietly. I'm thinking we've gone about this whole thing all wrong, Kenneth told Brian loud enough for Diane and Mary Lou to hear. He motioned with his bottle toward the mountains. This was never gonna work, and we should have seen it in the first place. I'm mad, I guess, that I let us come this far for nothing. We're gonna have to think through our steps better than this. Kenneth shook his head and continued. Ulfar's spear is no joke. From what we have seen, it has the abilities and attack powers of a demonic creature all on its own. I also think that the other things that have happened along the way are not accidental. Can I prove it? Well, no. But the attack on Mary Lou at the rest stop was something different. That was more than physical. According to what Diane and Mary Lou saw, it was a creature that fits the classic description of a demon. That's a spiritual issue beyond the artifact itself. Kenneth looked straight at Diane and back at Brian. I see what you're saying, Diane said. It was a spirit, a nasty one. It concerns me that the demon was fully and physically present. That takes something not only strong-willed, but powerful to boot. For the most part, according to John here, spirits aren't allowed to be seen by human eyes, and they ain't supposed to interfere with us. I get that, Kenneth acknowledged. If it were a hard and fast rule, they break it often enough. My point, though, is that we've approached this purely physically, but the spear's spiritual aspect is untouched this whole time. We need a way, just like when we fought Ulfa and kicked his ass, to deal with both the physical and spiritual. Kenneth paused to sip his drink and continued. I don't know where the demons are in this for sure, but I'd bet you it has something to do with Loki. This thing belongs to him, right? Good point. I suppose you could say that technically the spear is his property. Diane agreed. But no way am I gonna let him have it, she declared. It already cost us one friend, and probably two, 'cause I think Rachel has just lost it. She's so paranoid she's jumping at every shadow. Yeah, Rachel doesn't need to be around the spear at all. Brian shook his head with a worried expression. She's even starting to accuse everybody of stuff that never happened, including stuff they never said. I don't think Rach can tell anymore what's real and what's not. And, Kenneth added, I know it affected Mary Lou when she was wounded. We can't afford any more accidents here. So far, those of us that are here have been strong enough to resist the worst of its effects. But from here out, one of us has to stand guard on it at all times with the necessary backup. There's something else. I hear a but coming, Brian said. Actually, there is a but, or a what if, Kenneth replied. What if the demon who attacked Mary Lou were to be influenced by, or even worse, get its paws on the spear? Was that what it was trying to do? Kenneth bared his teeth and hissed through his clenched jaw at the thought. Like, maybe distract everybody and, while they were tending me, it snatched the spear? Mary Lou sat up straight with her eyes wide. It also could have been a random attack of opportunity, Diane pointed out. We can't assume nothing. Still, I agree we better watch our backside a lot better, 'cause if your guess and mine are correct, we'll see more trouble. I told you yesterday we gotta be running with our eyes wide open. Well, we do. We don't give up, and we don't get mad. Get glad? Mary Lou quipped. No, we get vigilant and don't get surprised again, smart-ass, Kenneth said, raising an eyebrow at her. Puns and commercials aside, remember we are dealing with something sentient, magical, and spiritual with inherent power of its own, if we are listening to Pele. I believe Diane is understating the situation. We aren't just going to have trouble. No, we're going to have to fight, maybe to the death, before we're really done. And by now, we aren't strangers to that. I hope what you just said is not a prophetic statement. Brian gulped his beer to try and drown out his friend's comment. Mary Lou looked around at the grim faces of her companions as what Kenneth said slowly sunk in. Bone-chilling quiet seemed to drop around them like a curtain, walling them off from the rest of the world. Goosebumps tingled up her arms to her neck. She tried to shake the feeling. Well, we can't do anything else for now. How about some chocolate and marshmallows? Mary Lou grabbed one of the 2 bags of marshmallows and tried to pull it open. It resisted, then gave way with an explosive pop that sent marshmallows not only into her lap, but flying everywhere. Oops, Mary Lou half smiled, half gritted her teeth. She picked up as many stray marshmallows as she could save. That wasn't supposed to happen. You could have asked for a knife. Here, give me that. Kenneth got up and snatched the unopened bag and handed it to Brian. Let the experts handle it. Brian grinned at her when she huffed at the 2 of them. What? I like mine without dirt on them. He pulled out a knife and neatly sliced the second bag open without dropping any. He carefully pulled out a supply of the bag's contents and handed it back to Kenneth. Well, so do I, Mary Lou admitted. Don't mind me, Diane told them. I got plenty right here on this plate. She proceeded to stuff as many white puffy balls on her fork as she could fit and held them close to the fire. A little dirt never hurt nobody. It's all good. She winked at the girl sitting next to her. When her marshmallows were close to black, Diane grabbed a chocolate bar and a package of grams. Mary Lou followed suit, quickly blowing out the flame on the end of her fork and making a gooey mess that she popped into her mouth. That's perfect. I'm glad I thought of it, Mary Lou said with half-closed eyes. She reached for more and happily made a second batch. She licked the sticky coating off her fingers. It was a good idea, Brian agreed. As long as you don't dump them all on the ground. Hey! He said as a marshmallow flew through the air at him. In response, he threw one back. Soon, white puffy balls were flying back and forth across the campfire as they let off steam. Having fun lightened their mood and let them briefly forget the threat hanging over them. Their coyote companion chased down stray treats and happily snatched them up. Good boy, Diane told him, laughing. We have a cleanup crew. She deliberately tossed the coyote a marshmallow, which he snapped out of the air and swallowed in one gulp. Great catch, Mary Lou told him. He yipped enthusiastically, and she too threw one at him, which he also neatly caught. As the evening wore on, the close-knit group filled up on treats and talked late into the night. Mary Lou was the first to give up and go to her tent to bed. Sleepily, the girl took off her shoes in the light of her flashlight, fluffed her pillow, and tried to settle where a stone wasn't digging into her hip. Mary Lou drifted off to sleep, listening to her friends still muttering by their campfire. The quiet peace she felt earlier seeped in and helped her to a solid, dreamless sleep. Eventually, the others also went to their respective shelters to rest for the night. Kenneth and the coyote were still awake, guarding the campsites, when the screaming started. What the heck? Kenneth jumped up. The coyote ran to Mary Lou's tent with the young man right behind him. He looked around at Kenneth with a questioning expression in the dim light. "What now?" "Yep," came the reply from the puzzled coyote. He sniffed the zipped tent fly and sat down. The coyote's ears pricked to attention as he listened to the squealing, bumping, and rustling from inside the tent. A flashlight came on and illuminated the inside of the tent. The fabric walls shook. Concerned for his human packmate, he sniffed around the exterior walls of the tent but didn't smell anything amiss. He went back to Kenneth, who stood outside her tent, making human noises at the girl through the fabric. Not sure what was wrong, he sat half-crouched with his hackles up. The wild canine prepared to attack whatever was threatening her. The coyote watched Kenneth kneel in front of her tent, unzip the door, and address the tent's hapless occupant. Nearby, he saw that the other tents also had lights on. People were opening their tents to poke their heads out in sleepy puzzlement. The coyote didn't leave Kenneth's side, however. Instead, he shoved his canine head in beside Kenneth so he could see and sniff inside. "What on earth is wrong with you?" Kenneth demanded of Mary Lou. "Oh, my God! There's a squishy thing," she answered, frantically rustling through and lifting her blankets. "A what?" Kenneth's voice went a tone higher. He wasn't sure he heard her correctly. "A squishy thing," she said louder. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Just stop." "I said stop," Kenneth told her, putting a hand out to halt her frantic pawing of the blankets. "You obviously aren't dying, so calm down and explain." Mary Lou sucked in her breath and let it out. "Okay. I was sound asleep. I rolled over and put my hand down in the dark, where I couldn't see. I felt something, and it woke me up. It was squishy, like a big fat hornworm or a snake or something. It moved under my hand," she said. "I don't want it crawling on me in the middle of the night, only I can't find anything." "Are you serious?" He glared at her. "You woke up the whole campground for that?" She stared at him. He didn't sound sympathetic at all. "Did I?" The teen leaned over and looked out the door of her blue fabric dome tent. She had to squeeze past the coyote to do so. Sorry." Mary Lou withdrew and picked her pillow up to look under it, too. "Where is it? I swear to you, there's a squishy thing in here." "I have no idea." He looked at the coyote and shrugged his shoulders. "I think she just lost her marbles." Kenneth addressed him, pointing his thumb back inside the tent. The coyote started to push his way inside. Kenneth halted him with one hand and gently pushed him back. The wild canine sat back on his tail and moved to the side. "Hold back up, sir. Your hairy head is in the way," Kenneth told him firmly. "I can't see through you." "First of all, shine your light," Kenneth addressed Mary Lou. The coyote watched the light flash around the tent some more, but at least Kenneth was calming the girl. His hackles settled. "I don't see anything," Mary Lou said. "Probably because there's nothing here," he declared. "You were asleep. You probably dreamed it. Go back to sleep." Not till I figure out what that was." Mary Lou resumed pawing through her blankets. "Fine. Get out," Kenneth said in a deliberate low tone. The coyote watched Kenneth offer his hand. The coyote nosed the girl with interest as the boy helped Mary Lou up, out, and to her feet. He wagged his tail like a dog. She didn't smell injured. Footsteps approached from behind. Recognizing Diane's smell, the coyote didn't look around. "Is everything okay?" Diane asked slowly. Her words slurred a little bit as she rubbed her eyes and firmly pulled a pink throw blanket around her shoulders. "Yeah, you can go back to bed. I got this," Kenneth told her above the furry gray head that attempted to push forward again. Sniffing further, the coyote recognized another faint aroma. He licked his chops with a sudden gleam in his eye. "What's wrong?" "She thinks something got in her tent," Kenneth replied, translating the girl's confused frustration into more understandable meaning. "We're gonna pull the blankets and shake 'em out." "Whatever it is, you'll find it that way," Diane said quietly, and nodded. She retreated to her tent. The coyote could hear her talking to Brian in low tones. He laughed, then zipped his tent. With the coyote stuck by his side like a burr, Kenneth pulled each blanket, pillow, pillowcase, and piece of clothing out of the tent. He shook them out while Mary Lou held the flashlight with chagrin when nothing out of the ordinary appeared. Finally, the open tent door allowed the coyote to enter and nose under the last blanket. Sniffing enthusiastically, while the humans were outside shaking another item of clothing, he found what he was looking for, nestled deep in a fold, unnoticed. He snatched up his prey. Gingerly holding it in his mouth, he slunk out of the tent with his head down. Kenneth watched his coyote friend walk over to his shelter, barely illuminated by a small lantern. There he laid down, made some chewing noises, and swallowed. With his head on his paws, the coyote sighed and watched the rest of the proceedings with his eyes. The teen had a sudden suspicion as to what the coyote had just found in the tent and thought he knew the source of the commotion. Kenneth eyed him sardonically. "Uh-huh. I didn't see a thing." He laughed a little. "I didn't see anything either," Mary Lou said, oblivious. She quietly glared at her tent. "I think your squishy thing is gone. I believe you can go back to bed," Kenneth told her as he held up the last blanket. "You have to put everything back. Here you go. I'm done." He grinned unrepentantly and handed her the pile of cloth they had just dragged out of her tent. "But what the heck?" She wrinkled her brow in confusion. Shrugging her shoulders, she set to putting it all back in order so she could sleep during what little was left of the night. "I swear there was something in here," she muttered softly to herself. Whatever it was, she assured herself, it had to have been scared away after all that. The coyote and Kenneth sat companionably side by side, watching the girl get resettled. When all was quiet again, Kenneth stroked his soft ruff. "I could have told her, but why?" the teen whispered to him. Kenneth reached into his pocket and pulled out a marshmallow. "Here, you want another one?" The coyote accepted it gently and thumped his tail, chewing carefully till the sticky sweet puff melted across his tongue. "Don't expect more," Kenneth chuckled to himself. "That is the last one." May 10th. Beyond the Veil. Ichor still oozed from the gaping wound that had been Ictathyr's shoulder, though it had lessened. Black droplets rained down as he fled. The scent of his blood attracted small imps who were practically only smiley faces with fangs to dart around him and gleefully lap up his essence. The daemons snarled and snapped at the flying nuisances. Tiny serpentine shadows with only enough mind to know fear and hunger crept ever closer. They waited for him to weaken enough that they could feast. Hatred curled in Ictathyr's mind, in Ictathyr's ruined chest at those who had eluded him. His limbs trembled with fear and anticipation as he contemplated the hunt ahead of him. The lightworkers were dangerous prey, and might be his end. But far greater terror of the fallen angel, his enforcer, and Loki held him to his course. The Dramorzan bared his teeth at the images in his head. He knew his job. He had torn and clawed his way to his high position among his brethren, only to be reduced to an errand dog. His particular talents as a spirit of sadism were wasted on this endeavor. However, greed pushed Ictathyr where the threat of harm failed. There were too many opportunities in the mortal realm for him to stray from his purpose. "Lad will be plentiful and beautiful with the spear in hand." He practically sobbed at the thought. Tremors racked Ictathyr's frame as he stumbled and almost fell. Shrieks and cries sounded along his back trail as those who hunted him sensed vulnerability. Ictathyr drew on his rage at being thwarted. It drove him, wounded as he was, to keep his feet. He hadn't the days and weeks it would usually take to fully heal and regenerate if he were to catch his prey. It would be now, or else risk the Urgermach or a Gibril coming for him for his failure. No, he told himself. Feed and grow strong, then kill. He would start with the girl with the blazing light, then go for the shaman and kill her. And when she was a sticky spot on the ground, he would. Ictathyr stumbled again shakily and lost his train of thought. The daemon, unsure if he could tear a hole in the veil in his present state, gave up on the idea of jumping. He quested for an established path to a stable gate into the mortal realm. Finally, in the confusion of the mists where lost souls wander, he found what he was searching for. Turning aside onto the curving path, the daemon ran with renewed vigor, hoping to slip past the guardians of the ether without being noticed. The risk of being caught by one of them was typically too great because it would mean instant and permanent death if seen. Out of options, Ictathyr took the direct route and exited into the mortal world. Ictathyr crept deadly silent from shadow to shadow. He quested for the spiritual presence of emotional misery that would enable his unique attack style. He shrank away from those whose psychic scent burned with light. The daemon had no wish to bite into a soul with the mark of spiritual protection upon them. He also ignored the lesser beings as beneath notice. Instead, he hunted that which would give his darkness strength. Someone like him, without faith and too weak to fight or even recognize his presence. An exceptionally dark place behind a thick tangle of brambles beneath a fir tree provided a place to wait and watch. The daemon grew still. This position was a good vantage point beside a lightly graveled path. No one noticed the inky black presence or faintly glowing eyes as they passed by. Ictathyr watched patiently. Some potential targets strolled in pairs, some jogged alone, and an occasional human passed by with a leashed dog. For the humans, the only indication anything was amiss in the park was the cold area along the out-of-the-way section of walkway. Some passers-by shivered and scurried off. A young girl of about 15 who pushed a bicycle sensed something more. She stopped and tried to peer into the bushes, wondering why she felt a sudden creeping fear. She rubbed her goosebumps, shook her head, and walked off muttering to herself. All of these people the daemon left alone. He waited for something specific. The sun needed to travel further away so that the absence of light could provide better cover for his purpose. It grew colder and began to get late when Ictathyr's patience bore fruit. Past a neatly mowed field beyond the path that he stalked, and beyond the families relaxing at picnic tables or throwing a ball, a new arrival set off the daemon's alarm bells. Anticipation tingled along his spine. He licked his fangs in glee. There, hunt, kill, he thought. The dark spirit flowed from shadow to shadow. He hid, yet moved steadily closer to his goal. The human appeared to be alone. The pristine white, red, and blue pizza delivery sign contrasted with the rusty top of Vincent Kovich's '72 Ford Pinto wagon. Sometime in the past, the car had been blue. However, rust showed through in mottled patches. It had a rattle, and the seats held together with duct tape and hope. The car's occupant opened its squeaky door, got out, and slammed it. "Piece of shit," he snarled at it. "Soon's I can afford it, I'm getting a Mustang." He pulled out a pack of cheap dime store cigarettes and lit one. "The girls will be all over a nice guy like me driving one of those," he muttered to himself as he ground the butt between his teeth. A young boy who ran by chasing a ball was enough for the man to feel a quick flash of distaste. Damn kids and the brats' welfare moms. He paused, feeling superior. Vincent considered going for a walk and changed direction. Slowly he strolled toward the big oak where he usually met his drug dealer every Saturday. He checked his watch and the pager on his belt. Late again, Vincent grumbled. I gotta get back to work, asshole. The pizza delivery man walked further out in the grassy field where a bright red flying disc with the word Frisbee in white lettering plopped at his feet and rolled. Grinning, he chased it down and picked it up. Instead of throwing it back to the kid who had overshot her mark with her throw, he took aim and threw it into a fir tree instead. It got stuck on a branch. Sorry, kids, he grinned, pleased with himself. A small girl who looked to be no more than 3 tried to shake the tree's trunk and began to cry when the toy failed to come down. Ichthyer watched the man interact with the other humans in petty cruelty. Too easy. The daemon bared his teeth in version of a grin. Think you are sadistic, human. Let me teach you what that means. He laughed. Another shadow, blacker than night, stalked along Ichthyer's back trail. The drops of darkness where the other daemon had bled attracted the attention of a very specialized daemon who was adept at tracking. Where Ichthyr was vaguely dog-like, the daemon was all cat in appearance. Tiamore was large and graceful. He was reminiscent of a panther in size and appearance, and his long fur was spiky and stiff. Unlike the spirit who previously came through this area, Tiamore blended and displayed no hurry. Ultimately, he had no use for other demoni, and no loyalty to his own kind. He hunted alone. Today, though, an Urgermach had demanded that he follow the wounded daemon. It suited Tiamore to see what was going on, so he agreed. Quietly, Tiamore followed the trail to the gate and beyond. When he emerged on the other side, it didn't take long for him to find Ichthyr. The wounded daemon was watching a human who provoked a crying child. Tiamore tasted taint in the air long before he came up beside Ichthyr, joining him under a large, rusty car. Mine, Ichthyr snarled aggressively. You can have him, Tiamore replied. His golden eyes were calm, and his long tail flipped casually. The child is mine. With their territory staked out, they both watched and waited. When the child ran crying partway back to her mother, who was distracted by her older sibling, she turned around and tried once more to dislodge her frisbee. The 2 demone saw that no one was watching her. Tiamore struck swiftly. He pounced, and the child tripped and fell. He held her down with his paw on her back and purred to her, pulling the kinetic energy of her emotional sorrow into himself. Let go of your fear and your unhappiness, child. Give it to me. The black cat projected his thoughts into her open mind. In her innocence, she responded with a giggle. Go back to your mother, child. This is no place for you, he told her, withdrew from her thoughts, and let her up. She turned around and saw him. Kitty! She exclaimed happily and clapped her hands. She completely forgot about her toy. In response, Tiamore sat down and pretended to wash his paw and ear like a normal cat. Hey, kitty! Tiamore was amused and wandered deliberately away. By the time the child brought her mother back to see the pretty kitty, Tiamore was gone. When Tiamor rejoined Ictathyr in the shadows of Vincent's car, he felt satisfied and well fed. Ictathyr, however, spat at him.
"Shall I kill her for you so you can have a proper meal?"
The Dromorzen laughed at him disrespectfully.
"That was a pitiful display. Tears of sorrow. Pathetic!"
Ictathyr snarled.
"I don't know why the others tolerate you, mortal-born filth."
In response, Tiamor swiped dagger-like claws across Ictathyr's snout in warning.
"My prey," the cat hissed. "Shall I kill you for your insolence? You are sloppy, wasteful, foolish. I have no need for your petty games."
He insulted the Dromorzen daemon. Ictathyr attempted to bite his opponent. Lightning fast, Tiamor calmly swiped his claws across the other side of the spirit's face.
"I can do this all day," Tiamor purred. "You, however, are running out of time and strength."
Ictathyr drew himself up with hackles raised to intimidate the other daemon. Tiamor stood and stalked closer until he was eye to eye with Ictathyr. There he stood, motionless but for the tip of his tail, and waited silently. Ictathyr looked down and backed away a step.
"Just wait. I will get you later,"
he growled, trying to save face.
"You are welcome to try."
Tiamor sat back down, unimpressed.
"Besides, there's an Urgermach enforcer that will likely end you before you get the chance."
Well, the two demoni argued. Crickets began to chirp in the gathering dusk. Most of the human families were leaving. Except for some young adults lingering in the park, few people were still around. Vincent had exchanged what little tip money he had for the expected drug delivery and neared the car with purposeful footsteps. Ictathyr and Tiamor stilled and grew silent. The man hesitated and threw his cigarette down next to the car. Ictathyr launched himself inside the open car door when Vincent wasn't looking. Satisfied, Ictathyr noted that the interior was big enough for a body to fit. The daemon examined the man more closely. He was white-skinned, with a narrow face, mid-30s with greasy brown hair, and the beginning of a paunch. Ictathyr could smell faint traces of beer on him and beneath the seats. Vincent's aura was simple to taste and smell. The spirit snaked his tongue out and read him. Hatred, sadism, greed, impatience, laziness, dishonesty. Did he have any redeeming qualities? Ictathyr snaked his tongue out again. He loves his grandma, who raised him. She was in a nursing home, dying, and the man hadn't been to visit her. Another tasting. He also wanted a girlfriend, but wasn't willing to clean himself, had no ambition, and was an addict. Ictathyr waited as he saw clearly the man's intent. The man was not a light worker, so this human posed no risk to him. Ictathyr whispered to the man, purposeful but gentle with his suggestions. The man would think they were his own thoughts.
"Go ahead, do it. You know you want it. You can call work and tell them your car broke down. It's only a tiny lie."
"Fuck work," the pizza driver said explosively. "I hate those assholes. People never give me enough tips, the stingy bastards."
"Take the drugs and get high. Oh, look. What a beautiful young lady that is over there. Go talk to her."
Vincent popped a couple of pills in his mouth. He then opened a paper with a white powder and snorted it. A young lady passed by, walking toward the park entrance with a bicycle. The front tire had gone flat.
"Take the screwdriver. Offer to help. She'll be impressed."
Ictathyr needled the human. The drugs were taking effect already. It was getting easier to go deeper in his mind with the power of suggestion.
Might need a knife, too.
The daemon whispered when the man had the screwdriver. The man reached for a butterfly knife he kept in his glove box in response to the thought. He stopped to admire the deer antler handle.
There. Catch the pretty lady before she gets away.
The daemon snickered.
What a beautiful girlfriend she is.
Ictathyr kept up the commentary as he crept along behind the man who hurried after the girl with the bike.
All for the taking.
Tiamori watched the following events unfold dispassionately. The result was a foregone conclusion the moment the drugs were in the man's system. Ictathyr was going to eat well this day. Cat-like, Tiamori delicately sniffed the cigarette Vincent had discarded on the ground. He took the psychic scent of the man from the mostly burned roll of paper and tobacco. The spirit of sorrow turned away. He would be able to track the human later. Remorse was a powerful sorrow. Once Ictathyr was done with him, it would be his own turn. Such a rich and vulnerable meal would never again know peace, but through redemption or death. The small demone, who had little intelligence beyond the desire to feed, swarmed here. They favored human prey with a drug-induced lack of self-control. These Tiamori ignored and went about his own business, where he could no longer hear the screams. Tiamori was aware that it was almost unheard of for a daemon such as himself to have concern for humans. In truth, he didn't care what others thought of him. He slid carefully back through the gate where he could jump and make his report, thus discharging his job. It would be inconvenient to have an enforcer on his tail if he didn't make sure the fallen angel was informed. Vincent awoke disoriented in the pre-dawn hour. He slowly and stiffly sat up from where he was laid over on something cold and hard. His clothes felt sticky and damp. He felt disassociated from himself and emotionless. It was as if he distantly watched a movie that he was directing. The man groaned without recognizing where he was. He attempted to move, but his hand hit something soft and still. He pulled his hand back.
What the? Am I dreaming? Oh, hell!
He exclaimed.
What happened?
Vincent finally realized that he had been asleep on top of the girl who had twisted up like a broken doll. Her blood covered them both. She was stone cold and not moving or breathing.
Oh, my God!
The pizza delivery man began to scream and cry. No one heard him. He was alone on a Sunday morning. Hardly anyone was up and about their business yet.
What do I do? Oh, God! What do I do?
He sobbed hysterically.
The cops! They'll be after me!
He started to stumble to his feet, but tripped over the bicycle and fell. He grabbed the bike with bloody hands and leveraged himself to his feet, where he swayed weakly. Ictathyr sat watching. The daemon laughed at Vincent contemptuously. Delicious blood and death had filled him as the sweet girl brutally died. She was too pure of spirit to be bitten by the likes of himself, but he could still use her to feed through the actions of a corrupted human. Deliciously cooperative, the taste of Vincent's sadism as he committed the murder had been wonderfully filling for the daemon. Only someone filled with that much rage over the feeling of denial for something owed could allow the severely wounded Ictathyr any control. Ictathyr hadn't even needed to suck the man dry. So much dark energy filled him that he began healing immediately. No more black blood dripped from his wounded arm and shoulder. Slowly, regeneration came from his shadowed core. Ictathyr was ready to discard this particular human. Maybe he would come back later for another episode. He didn't really care. Ictathier turned his back, still laughing gleefully at the ruined lives behind him. It was time to chase the other teenage girl to redeem his pride and reputation. He could vaguely feel the wrongness that traveled with her and fixated on it. Darkness and speed was his ally. Ictathier ran swiftly and surely toward the spiritual taint which exposed the presence of the Spear of Chaos in the fabric of the mortal realm. Anyone who might have seen him in the darkness assumed he was a large dog running past, and paid him no mind. May 11th, Lamone, Colorado. Hey, Brian, you got your ears on back there, bud? Kenneth carefully held the steering wheel of Diane's car with one hand and supported the CB mouthpiece with the other as he drove. Go ahead, Brian's voice crackled through the radio in reply. I'm powerful hungry. The Lamone exit is coming up. I'm going to pull off at the next convenience store with sandwiches. Diane says she'll buy us all a late lunch, and she's filthy enough to want a proper shower in bed. 10-4, sounds good to me, Brian answered and hung up the radio. Food and bath sound great. Mary Lou was awake and alert. I'm still stiff from sleeping on the ground in the car ride. A break should help. I think I'm ready for some coffee, Brian told her. You want some? Ew. Thanks, but no thanks unless you can find some that tastes as good as it smells fresh ground, Mary Lou replied, wrinkling her nose in distaste. I don't know about that, Brian replied. I have to be up sometimes all hours if we get an emergency call out on the ambulance or to go to work a fire. I'm not sure I could make it without the bean juice. He laughed. You're welcome to it, Mary Lou joked. I'll stick to the simple stuff. Brian considered what she'd said. Maybe some electrolytes would help if you're all that stiff. You want some Gatorade or something? Hey, that's not a bad idea, she nodded. I was thinking juice and some salty crackers, but that would hit the spot. Brian flicked his turn signal on and followed Kenneth off the road into a large parking lot. He saw that his friend had selected a convenience store that backed directly up to a field with many thick trees. This will work, Brian said enthusiastically and pulled into the shade. He parked the car close to the trees. Brian addressed the large wolf in the back seat. This looks like a good spot that you can get out to, Professor. We'll take care of you first. Then you can wait in the car for us and lay low while we get food and drinks. If you got this handled, Brian, I'm going to go on in and make a pit stop myself. Mary Lou broke into Brian's somewhat one-sided conversation. Yep, we're good. Ready, John? Brian took hold of the professor's leash just for show and walked briskly to get behind enough cover to hide them. Diane followed with the coyote. Kenneth found Mary Lou in the store browsing for her drink and snacks. They got a good selection of sub sandwiches, too, he told her, and pointed when she looked around, craning her neck to see where he meant. Ah, thanks. I wonder if they've got roast beef. She walked off. Bottom shelf, Kenneth called behind her. He adjusted his grip on the food he'd selected, and also grabbed chips and a chocolate candy bar. Diane and Brian came in the door just in time to witness an altercation at the checkout counter. A man and woman were being confronted. The man wore an unusually heavy brown coat over his dirty overalls. His clothing was out of place for the pleasant weather. Take it out. I can see you're hiding it under your clothes, the clerk demanded. Hey, I ain't doing nothing. I'm offering to pay, the man objected. The short, dark-haired woman with him kept looking toward the door. You've got a lot more than that in your jacket, the clerk replied angrily. You're stealing, and I'm tired of this shit. You're the third one this week. Give it back right now and get out of my store, she challenged. I don't have it. He shifted his weight from foot to foot and wouldn't look at the store employee. Liar! Put it down now, or I'm calling the cops. The clerk raised her voice and shouted. Kenneth deliberately handed Mary Lou his food. Brian, he gestured with his head to the couple at the counter. Brian immediately understood and handed his lunch to Diane. Here, hold these, he told her. They both walked up behind the shoplifters. "Hey, need some help?" Brian asked, bouncing on his toes. Kenneth grinned and blocked them from exiting. "Not if they put back the stuff down and leave," the clerk told them. The man in the brown jacket looked around. Finally, he started pulling things out of his clothes. Bread, hot dogs, 2 drinks. "There! And the rest of it! I can see it!" the clerk said tightly. A pile quickly formed on the countertop as more followed the previous items. After candy bars, chips, and a bag of donuts, the clerk was satisfied. "Now get out! Out! Don't let me catch you in here again," she told them. On the way out, the man dropped a package of condoms, but didn't stop to pick them up. He skirted out to a black Chevy truck with the woman right behind him. They jumped in and sped off. The clerk looked at Kenneth and Brian gratefully. "Thank you," she said. "I'll be right with you as soon as I get these out of the way. It's unbelievable how people just want to take shit for free. Makes everything more expensive for everyone." "I know, right?" Brian winked at the clerk, who raised an eyebrow. Her expression was still stormy. He continued unfazed. "Can I have your phone number? You're really cute." Mary Lou rolled her eyes. She stepped forward, shaking her head before things went downhill from there. "Hey, I'd be glad to put that stuff back on the shelf for you if you'd like. That way you can assist your other customers and they won't have to wait." "Thank you. If you could do that, I'll go ahead and ring you guys up," the clerk told her gratefully. The woman determinedly ignored the guy who was gracelessly trying to flirt with her. "You're welcome," Mary Lou told her. She picked up several items and carried them to their shelves. As they were leaving, Kenneth was a little behind the rest of the group. He walked over to Brian's car with a big grin on his face. He held up a torn receipt paper with hastily scrawled numbers. "What's that?" Brian asked him as he was getting into the car. "Phone number," Kenneth laughed. He wadded it up and shoved it in his pants pocket. Still smiling, he went to Diane's car and got in the passenger seat. They pulled into a motel parking lot about a mile down the road and stopped again. Diane went inside and came back out several minutes later with 2 room keys. Tiamori slid back through the gateway opening and onto the moon pads. He immediately saw another daemon's severed head and splattered remains. A spike impaled the head. Flickers of silver fire still burned in patches, gradually evaporating the tainted blood into the ether of the moon paths. A powerful presence flared to his left, giving Tiamori only enough time for a flash of foreboding before he was hit. A sharp-edged bar of light whistled through the air and slammed into his head, snuffing out the vision in his left eye. Tiamori was knocked sprawling. He yowled in agony as the wound sizzled and spat from the radiant heat. An armored boot slammed down onto his throat, pinning him in place. "They are under my protection, Taman. You shall hunt them no longer." A steely, feminine voice snarled in old Aramaic. Tiamori's one remaining good eye watered in the being's radiance. Crystalline armor sheathed her from shoulder to heel, shimmering in the light of the burning draconic wings behind her. Silver-gray eyes caught between dragon and cat stared down at the pinned form of the daemon piteously. Tiamori desperately reached up and hooked black talons in the joining of the crystal plate and leather armor. His paws smoked and sizzled as he struggled to escape. The being shifted her armored boot just enough to allow her prey to speak. "I hunt but one great lady. I know not whom you refer to." Tiamori replied formally in like tongue. The armored woman scoffed. "Demoni are very good at lying with the truth. Tell me, then, the name of the one you hunt." "Ichnathiam," the trapped daemon choked out in the native language of the demoni. "Another daemon, then." The lady furrowed her brows, puzzled, and then shrugged. "The politics of the demoni are of no interest to me.
You trespass on sacred ground. The moon paths are reserved for the dead and the dreaming. You will die, as my duty demands.
Despair curled around Tia Mori's core. The worst fear of any demon who dared traverse between worlds was realized. The lady raised her dual-pointed spear and struck down. Her aim was true. The spear point stabbed straight through his shoulder and into his very core. Just before it reached the center and immolated the very essence of his being, the spear point halted and withdrew. The pressure of the armored boot pulled back. Trembling, Tiamori barely had the strength to raise his head the few inches it took to look at his persecutor. She stood a few feet away. Her brightness dimmed as she folded her wings within her being. Her head tilted as she contemplated the downed form of her prey.
Not a demon after all, then. A fragment or forgotten sorrow. You are grief shed so the soul can begin again. I see you. All you have been. All you have done.
She folded her arms and shifted her weight to one hip.
But what do I do with you?
She tilted her head back and shouted to the clouded sky above them. Habu! True terror pierced Tiamori's core, much as the spear point had. Father? Father who? Father the Creator or her father? Any father which gave to this creature's birth will be terrible indeed. In response, a second gate opened on the path. With a tearing slice, it appeared as if the ether in front of Tiamori twisted when it was pulled back like a curtain. The first thing the dark cat caught sight of was a golden staff topped with a giant pair of scales. Tiamori let out a squeal of terror as he recognized Anubis. Instantly, he realized who had caught him. Kibachet! He cursed in on himself, shaking. Why did she not kill me outright? Tiamori wondered in confusion.
You called my daughter?
Anubis asked. His voice was loud and echoed like thunder in this place. He nodded at the daemon, noticing the quivering black shadow form at his daughter's feet.
I didn't think you would require my assistance with executions.
Kibachet stood over the downed daemon, suddenly guarding and protecting the one she had tried to kill moments earlier.
The trouble is, this one has done nothing worthy of execution, she told him. He has not killed an innocent. There is much harm that can be committed without killing,
Anubis murmured thoughtfully. He waved his free hand over the dark creature. He also sensed what Kibachet had seen.
Interesting and rare. A cast-off shadow of pain. Set would have interest in this,
Anubis said softly.
This is truth. Kibachet nodded. Thus I called you to weigh his heart. This can be done,
Anubis agreed.
Though Set carries the true heart, I shall weigh what remains against the feather of truth.
Tiamori tried his best not to look. Instead, he kept his nose tucked under his tail. The scales creaked ominously close. He didn't move when he felt Anubis's touch, knowing it would do him no good to attempt to flee. Anubis took Tiamori's core by the simple expedient of closing his claw around it and lifting that part of the cat's essence free without killing him outright. The guardian was undecided how this would conclude, so he placed the dark core onto the scales. Surprised, Anubis saw the scales balance ever so slightly in the daemon's favor.
Congratulations, spirit. You may live.
Anubis pronounced. His fate is undecided. This will be reported to the Prime Creator in the Court of Heaven. Kibachet will finish with you, and I shall allow you passage henceforth. But know that you shall be watched. Anubis concluded ominously and stepped back through the gate to his temple. The aftermath of Anubis's departure felt anticlimactic, and the resulting silence was deafening. Tiamori uncurled. He was surprised to find himself intact, including the return of his sight. He blinked both eyes. Are they letting me go? Tiamori wondered. He looked Kibachet directly in the eyes. He realized the lady's gaze had shifted to green in color with her mood change. In contrast to their initial confrontation, she wore a pleasant expression. What are you going to do with your freedom? Kibachet asked. Tiamori thought briefly on his response, knowing he'd better be clear and truthful. I am to report Jibril's enforcer, an Urgermach-class daemon, the whereabouts and actions of Ichthir, he began. Despite telling Tiamori earlier that she wasn't interested in the politics of his kind, she realized she needed to know more. The daemon at the park, Kibachet said in a level tone. Yes, Tiamori confirmed. I saw him earlier attack a group of people under my protection, Kibachet revealed. What do you know of this? I only know that Ichthir was assigned to procure an item in their possession, Tiamori answered. I only just caught up with him. More wasn't given to me to know, and I didn't care to ask. Kibachet laughed. It's typical of Demoni not to tell their underlings anything. Tiamori didn't have a response to her statement. He just shrugged. Fine. I will let you about your business, tears of sorrow. Call my name if you have need of me. But know this. I am not the only guardian of these paths. If you wish safe passage in this place, you will need to take my mark. Lady, Tiamori began formally, if my brethren see your mark upon me, they shall tear me to shreds and devour my remains. He tried to refuse gracefully. Kibachet smiled at him gently, her green eyes shining with mischief. It will take one with the Creator-given gift for discerning of spirits to see such a mark. Your brethren will be blind to it. Tiamori considered her offer carefully. This ordeal had been terrifying enough to go through once. He had no wish for a second incident with another who might not be so understanding. I accept, Tiamori said. Echoes of a past he barely remembered in the mortal world pushed him to trust her. He rose and gracefully came to her hand, which he placed on the top of his head. Silver lines and tick marks appeared on the daemon's forehead, with a brilliance that lit up the space around them. Tiamori instinctively shrank away from the contact first, but soon realized the terrible light was not burning him. When Kibachet removed her hand, the light faded. Still visible to the discerning eye, there remained a circular cartouche with the Lady of Cooling Water's name etched inside it. I have placed my name on you. Only one who is my personal agent would carry such a mark. Kibachet crouched to eye level and held his gaze. I warn you not to commit offense against the guiltless as your true nature dictates. I will know, she told him firmly. Because I let you live, I am also answerable for your future actions to the other powers of the Lesser Court. Do not try me. She rose to her feet. Now go make your report, Cat, and be careful. I have others to hunt. Kibichet's sudden absence left Tiamori alone on the path, wondering if the mark on his face was truly invisible. Resolving to see for himself, he sought a reflective fountain or gazing pool along the moon path. In an out-of-the-way corner, the sound of water over rock drew the shadow figure aside. With creeping hesitance, he moved closer. He lapped the clear water, relieved at first that he could see no light reflected in the pool. Moments later, he realized that he could see the faint outline of a silver disk, with Assyrian writing shining in his midnight black fur. He briefly studied his reflection. Tiamori, just for a moment, regretted allowing Kibichet to place her mark upon him. Only one with discerning of spirits. Unable to change his mind or circumstances, he accepted his lot with a shrug. Tiamori leaped into action. Flowing along the moon paths, he sped to a jump point. Although he was viewed with distrust by watchers tasked with the safety of travelers, he went unhindered. There was no trace left behind when he jumped, which indicated that a shadow creature had lingered on sacred ground. Happily wrapped in a moist towel with her wet hair draped and combed down her back, Mary Lou relaxed on the edge of the bed at the motel. Diane had followed up on her promise to rent a couple of rooms. The guys were next door to them. Mary Lou presumed they were also resting and showering. She looked around for something to do in the crisp, clean room while Diane occupied the bathroom. Her eyes lit on the television and the remote control on the dresser in easy reach. I wonder if there's anything good on the telly. Mary Lou retrieved the remote and poked its buttons until she got a response from the TV. She clicked through a couple of channels and landed on the Weather Channel. Looking at the weather map, she saw there wasn't much going on along their route to get home. Smooth sailing all the way. Supposedly, at least, she muttered to herself. Another click turned on the news. Oh, my God, she said to the talking box in front of her. Why? Just why? Why what? Diane had finished her shower and came out of the bathroom in pajamas with a towel wrapped around her head. She paused to test the knob of a door between their room and the guy's room. With its overall occupancy nearly full to capacity, the motel's double suite was the only space available. Satisfied? Diane nodded when she found it locked. Patting the towel, she pulled it off and worked on drying her hair. She walked over to where she could see the television screen. They found some girl dead in a park in one of the towns near where we were up in Washington, Mary Lou said and pushed the remote until the volume increased. Listen, they got her family talking to the reporters. Have identified 15-year-old Lacey Skillen, found dead in Riverside Park by a woman walking her dog. Police sources say they are looking for a suspect driving a Ford Pinto station wagon. Witnesses recall last seeing her alive riding her bicycle and talking to a pizza delivery driver that they say frequents the area. We go live with her mother next, but first, a commercial break. Damn, Diane said and shook her head, looking at the smiling picture of the dead teenager from happier times. What a waste. Honestly, what is this world coming to when you can't even go to the park in peace these days? I don't know. We've had some close encounters ourselves, though, Mary Lou pointed out. Just lucky that's not one of us lying there with a police escort to the morgue. Diane pursed her lips sadly. I had to do that too many times when I was on the force. Lives snuffed out before their time over jealousy or stupid pride or greed. Precious babies lost through neglect. Women beaten to death by the men they thought would love and protect them. She shook her head. Brian could tell you some stories, too. He knows. We get way too many calls. It's a good day when we're bored, Diane concluded. She paused. All managed to get there in time to save somebody. Mary Lou sighed. Yeah, he told us. Diane went to the mirror, pulled the towel off her head, and grabbed a comb. See if there's something less morbid on. Turn on something sedate, like golf or bird watching or anything non-violent. I don't want to think about or see anything more strenuous. Mary Lou pointed the remote at the TV again to pull up the main menu. Okay, let's see. There's fishing, comedy reruns, a dog show, an ocean exploratory documentary, and history documentaries on Noah's Ark. It looks like they're claiming to have found it a couple of years ago. That'll do for some background noise, Diane said. She picked up a large container wrapped in plastic. I'm going to fetch some ice for the coolers. Do you want to come? I'll get my ice later. You go ahead. I'm going to watch TV for a while and maybe catch a nap, Mary Lou responded. The guys are next door. I should be fine. After Diane walked out with the coyote at her heels on his leash, it was quiet enough to hear the program. Mary Lou changed into blue jeans and a t-shirt, then folded herself cross-legged in the center of the bed. She watched the archaeologists explore the site of the Ark till the program concluded. Another show followed on the life and death of Jesus. The girl clicked through the stations again and put it back to where she had it. Deciding she was hungry, she fetched the rest of her lunch and sat at the table where she could see the TV. Mary Lou took a couple of bites and dropped her sandwich. She stared at the TV in stunned excitement. No. Could it possibly be that easy? She started to move and bumped the table. Oh, shit! An epithet escaped her lips when her Gatorade wobbled precariously. She had to simultaneously grab the small round table and her drink to keep both from tipping over. She paused. The Spear of Destiny. That's a thing? Mary Lou said aloud to the empty room. Then she grabbed her room key and ran, nearly tripping on her shoes as she exited the room. She failed to notice that the door didn't shut behind her. Ken! Brian! She knocked on their motel room door, practically hopping up and down with excitement. The numbered, heavily wooden door opened to her second knock. Oh, hey, what's up? Brian asked her. He came through the door and closed it behind him, but not before she saw Kenneth on the phone. She furrowed her brow. Why did Brian just close the door like he's hiding something? She wondered bravely and shrugged. The Spear of Destiny. You ever heard of it? She asked him. It sounds familiar, but I can't say I have for sure, he told her. He waited for his friend to explain. Oh, okay. According to this program I'm watching on cable, it's the Roman spear used to pierce the side of Christ at the crucifixion. It has an actual name. Brian's expression brightened. Oh, yes. Now I remember. I knew it sounded familiar. I couldn't put my finger on it, he said. Do you remember anything else about it? She asked him. Is it a real thing for sure? I can't say I remember a lot about it. I remember it from church and some of the Masonic teachings, but can't remember anything else about it. He gave her an intent look. I'm sorry I can't help. You're going somewhere with this, Brian stated. Yes. What they're saying is that people believe that if you carried it into battle, you can't lose. Like, ever. Maybe if we could find it, we could use it somehow, Mary Lou wondered. Maybe. If it's real, and if you could get your hands on it, he said. Is Ken? Mary Lou trailed off. Busy? Not too busy to run this by him. He might know something I don't. He's the walking encyclopedia. Let's go see what he says. Brian turned, opened the door, and left it open for Mary Lou to follow him inside their room. Where's Diane? Brian inquired. She went off to get ice for the coolers. She's not back yet, Mary Lou said. By herself? Brian looked concerned. Negative. Coyote went with her. Mary Lou nodded at the open door. That's better than nothing, but not ideal, Kenneth said, while looking down at the table and writing on a paper. He looked up at her and gestured at the spear propped in the corner. That thing causes way too much trouble. By the way, if you girls hurry up in here a little bit, are hungry in a little bit, we ordered pizza, Brian told Mary Lou. Her stomach turned thinking about the report of the girl murdered by the pizza man. Nah, I'm really not in the mood for pizza. My sandwich covered it for now, but I'll get something else later. I've still got a little money, so dinner isn't a problem. Food is not why I came to your room, though. Okay, Hand? Kenneth gave her his full attention. I was just watching a program on TV, and they said something about an artifact called the Spear of Destiny. The spear the Roman commander Gaius Cassius Longus used to spear Jesus at the crucifixion, according to texts associated with Pilate. Kenneth nodded. I was thinking if it's a real thing, we could use it, Mary Lou told him. Yeah, probably, Kenneth agreed. Finding it would be like hunting a needle in a haystack. Nobody knows where it is. The spears that have surfaced have largely been debunked as fake replicas. Maybe School would have some knowledge of it, Mary Lou said hopefully. She might, if she'd be willing to tell us anything, Kenneth said, huffing a little. His expression was dubious. The immortals are not very forthcoming most days. It's worth a shot to ask her, Mary Lou insisted. Oh, well, we'll ask her. Just don't expect much, Kenneth agreed. Mary Lou thought about what he had said with her arms crossed. She leaned against the wall with her hand on the knob of the door between the two rooms. Mary Lou was surprised when it popped open. Oh, this unlocks on this side, she remarked and shrugged. Having this divider door might be useful. We could open this up between rooms without going outside. Might be safer. It might, Brian agreed. He plopped in a chair near the exit door of their room. I'm just glad to have a break from driving so I don't feel picky about the room one way or the other. That's for sure. Mary Lou started to step away from the door when the hinges squeaked behind her. Kenneth jumped to attention as the door slammed open with a thunderous crash against the wall. He wasn't able to reach her before a long, black, clawed arm extended through the door over Mary Lou's right shoulder. It hooked long, dagger-like talons under her collarbone from behind. The Daemon! Brian rolled out of his chair across the floor and grabbed for the lowest drawer in the room's dresser. With a gun, he came to his feet and slammed a clip home at the ready. He watched grimly for a good target. Kenneth wasn't idle as he watched the inky black creature attempt to pull his friend back into itself with its jaws wide open to bite. Mary Lou squealed in pain and dug her heels into the floor to keep from being pulled backward. She saw Kenneth remove his leather belt and loop it in his hand, but he couldn't get to their opponent with Mary Lou blocking the doorway. She grabbed for the Daemon's arm right above where it locked in her flesh and deliberately went to her right knee. Ictathyr's jaws snapped a hair's breadth above her head as she hurled him over her shoulder and onto the floor in front of her at Kenneth's feet. The Daemon's claws scored bone as they came out of her flesh in a shower of gore. Mary Lou screamed in earnest as the muscles tore and her arm went dead. Ictathyr was injured again from the physical contact. His claws sizzled and her blood felt like acid on his skin. Kenneth came forward to curb stomp the Daemon while it was on the floor. When the Dromorzen swatted at the teen, Kenneth was knocked off his own feet. Snarling savagely, Ictathyr leaped up and threw himself on top of the girl who was standing again. He intended to dispatch her quickly by simply snapping her neck before grabbing the spear and running. Instead, he looked directly into her face at close range and froze as he saw her eyes shift from blue-green to the icy blue of a stormy sea. To Ictathyr's spiritual sight, the girl's brightness increased and nearly blinding. The silver light around her terrified and fascinated him at the same time. He realized that killing her flesh would not make him safe from her wrath. It would only unsheathe the bright being underneath to finish him. With the two boys behind him, Ictathyr shoved the girl to the wall and wrapped his long claws around her neck to buy himself some time. He knew from experience the humans wouldn't act while he had the girl helpless. He grinned in sadistic glee.
Now you get to experience what it's like to have your arm ripped off, human queen,
he hissed into her face, grabbing her deadened arm by the wrist.
Get off me now!
Mary Lou gritted her teeth against the pain. Her gaze slid to the side where Kenneth came up behind the daemon with the belt. "Let her go!" Brian demanded. "I will shoot you!" Ichthyr laughed and half turned.
Your bullets don't work on me, human. By all means, fire your weapon.
Brian's eyes glittered with focus. "Try me, bitch. I came prepared. I'm always prepared. These are dipped in holy water." A low, throaty growl emanated from the wolf standing beside Brian's leg. Mary Lou remembered their hike up the mountain. In the excitement, she had forgotten his presence. The professor. She struggled through the pain to do what she had to. In the moment the daemon was distracted, Mary Lou slid her one good arm behind her back and put her left hand in her right back pocket. She came up with a sandwich bag full of herbs, partly open. Ichthyr laughed in her face with the realization that she hadn't blasted him outright. He lost his fear of her.
You have no idea who you are or what you can do.
He shoved his face closer and pushed the point home.
Human spells don't work on me either, little girl. You're finished. There's nothing you can do to stop me from killing you now.
Ichthyr gloated. "My spells don't have to work on you, asshole," she spat back at him defiantly. "They just have to work." Raising her leg, she kicked him off her and threw the bag at him left-handed. Kenneth finally got the angle he needed to grab the daemon by the neck with the belt and yank him backward. Satisfied, Mary Lou saw the daemon swipe reflexively at the bag. The thin plastic gave way, and the bag exploded, spraying the herbs within all over Ichthyr as Kenneth dragged him to the floor. "Have some flowers," Mary Lou said tightly. She slid down the wall as she felt a familiar weakness grip her. Before she lost consciousness from the pain and contact with the dark-born taint, she watched hell break loose on the daemon. It vainly tried to fight its way free of what now appeared to be a huge, hairy werewolf who grabbed hold of it in a vice grip with teeth and claws. Howling and fighting, the mighty strength of the wolf as it jumped up and down on him, clawing long gashes into him, Ichthyr finally broke free. A single shot rang out and grazed the demon's foot. He gave up and ran. Ichthyr howled in pain and rage as he was yet again forced to flee without the spear. A few blocks away, the daemon stopped in the shadows. He was limping badly. Part of his foot was blasted to shreds.
I will get what you have,
he hissed at them.
I'll be back, and the spear that you carry will be mine. It calls me. I hear it whispering.
I go down to get my pipe, and suddenly you guys got a commotion, Diane said, trying to slow her breath and calm herself. Sirens wailed down the street and got louder as they approached. Diane and Brian held pressure on Mary Lou's bleeding shoulder while they waited for the ambulance. Red and blue lights flashed a few yards away, lighting up Kenneth's face as he tried to explain the violent attack in their room to the authorities. Brian shook his head. That thing went for her again. This time the rest of us saw it. But we can talk about that later. I can hear the ambulance, Diane, and they aren't going to know what to do with that black dirt the demon leaves behind. They'll just stitch it all up and bandage it. So we better make sure this wound is clean before they get here. I'm on it, Diane told him with her mouth set in a firm line of determination. The bleeding is helping the cleansing of the wound quite a bit, but as fast as the last wound went necrotic when it was just a scratch, I'm going deep to make sure all the demon taint. Keep everybody off me while I work. Do what you got to do, Brian told her and looked down the street. I got this part. He got up and strolled off to meet the emergency responders. The ex-cop turned park ranger and shaman healer spread her chocolate brown hands out across the pale, freckled skin of the girl's chest and shoulder. She closed her eyes and hummed some low tones. Diane could feel the teen's flesh and bones under her hands, and winced at the damage. However, to her mind's eye, her concern was the familiar sickly green overlay of energy that she chased with her gifts and divine intervention. Finally, Diane sat back and allowed herself to be pulled to her feet by the EMTs. Getting out of their way, she moved aside to speak in soft undertones to the guys. "Mary Lou will be okay," Diane said as she watched the professionals work on the girl. "She's strong, and what I don't understand is why the demon keeps going for her specifically. It makes no sense. Ulfa's corralled in the artifact, and he shouldn't have any more of a grudge against her than us." "That is a big $10 question," Brian agreed. "She's getting the brunt of it now that Sierra's not here. More importantly, though, is if and when it will be back. This suggests that it's following us." Brian sighed. "And the other question? What are we gonna do about it?" Kenneth added. His amber brown eyes glittered black with suppressed rage. "You're right, though, Diane. There doesn't seem any reason for it unless what Brian is saying is true, and what I already suspected. Because of the spear's presence, we are being hunted." "Like we talked about when we camped. Maybe it really does want the spear, and she's the distraction?" Brian jammed his hands in his pockets and nodded his head, looking at the ground. "Well, I'm going to assume that's the case, and I'll be ready for it. I have holy ammunition." Brian bared his teeth in a grim mockery of a smile. The EMTs put Mary Lou on a stretcher to take her to the nearby medical center. Brian walked over to talk with them and returned as they loaded her on the ambulance. "They're taking her to the doctor to look at the wound and stitch it up. She should probably be fine to travel tomorrow if they let her out early enough," Brian told them. The motel manager found them when they were on their way back to their room. "I'm really sorry, folks. I've got housekeeping cleaning your room, but it's going to take a while for that to get done. I can get you set up in a different room if you like. We had guests leave and create vacancies because of the disturbance. We are cleaning a couple of them." "Great idea," Diane said with relief. "Do you have any security camera footage of the person or thing that came into our room?" she asked the manager. We do have some the cameras on. We can pull the images and give them to the police tomorrow morning. It will take that long to go through the films," he said. "Do you have a better description than what the officer said you saw? Who are we looking for?" Kenneth, always quick to think on his feet, answered. "It looked like some wild beast, although it could have been somebody in disguise that wandered into our room. He or it tangled with our Alaskan Husky mix, who chased it off and protected us." Nice dogs," the manager nodded. "My boy has 2 Huskies. Come by the office and you can see some pictures of them." "Certainly, I'll do that." Kenneth reached out and shook the man's hand. "Name's Ken." "Josh, here." "Excellent. We've got free coffee and donuts you can get, too. If you want, you can go ahead and move your things to the new room. I think the authorities have everything handled out here. I'll be in the office if you need anything." The manager handed 2 new room keys to Kenneth. He turned and headed away. "Well, you heard the man. Let's get to our new digs. We need to be back on the road early as possible, so we better try to get some sleep rather than worry any more ifs, whens, or maybes," Diane suggested as she yawned. "I'm for going to bed, locking the doors, and I'm not gonna move till morning." Late in the afternoon the next day, the bright sunshine had turned to partly cloudy and breezy conditions. The cars were on the road traveling east. Mary Lou was patched up again with her back propped against pillows. Between repeats of "It's a Kind of Magic," "Manic Monday," and "True Colors" pop fashion music, the radio blared updated reports on the manhunt for what the media quickly dubbed the Pizza Killer. 2 more new bodies turned up, and Kenneth reached for the dial to click it off. "Thank you," Mary Lou said. "I've about heard enough. I just hope they catch him." "He's being careless. They'll nab him," Kenneth said, and popped some gum in his mouth. "There are too many dead bodies in quick succession. Somebody's bound to see something." "He's sure got people running scared up in Washington State. I'd say we're lucky to be going the other way, but so far, that doesn't seem to be helping us." Mary Lou looked out the window and sighed. "Nope, but you're missing something important." Kenneth glanced sideways at her from the driver's seat. "You are alive." He emphasized the point by shaking a finger at her. "You came a long way from the scared girl I met in school a couple of years ago and became a real fighter. That wasn't O'Brien and me back there at the hotel. You kicked ass, girl. That thing had every intention of killing you. You outfought it and outsmarted it. Just like in our fight with the undead monsters. You rose to the occasion when you had to." "I'm still scared sometimes," she admitted. She got quiet when she thought about what he said. "Maybe," Kenneth acknowledged. "But you don't let that stop you, and you're real. It's called courage." He grinned with a mischievous gleam in his brown eyes. "Even if you are scared of squishy marshmallows." "Wait, what?" Mary Lou's eyes grew big, and she stared at him. "You found the squishy thing?" She slapped her forehead. "Seriously?" "Technically, no," Kenneth laughed. "Our coyote friend chased down your midnight nemesis and ate it. And no, I'm not going to ever let you live it down." "Now I'm really embarrassed," she said, but laughed. Slowly the miles wore away under their tires. When they finally reached Kentucky, Mary Lou took the wheel. "I'm familiar with the territory. My dad's from this state. I'm not too stove up to drive, and Ken needs a break," she told them, and drove the rest of the way home. Seeing the downtown Rockwood mix of brick and old boarded-up buildings was a welcome relief. At Professor Holderman's house, they set to unpacking, split up their gear, then returned to their respective homes. They decided that the Spear of Chaos would go home with Diane in the meantime. "We will regroup later and figure this out," Diane told them. "For now, go home and rest. Brian can come by and check on Coyote and me. We can help keep it under control, and it's still safer with me than at Carly's house. We can't afford mishaps." Deputy Brett Mulligan, a veteran of the United States military and longtime veteran of the Roane County Sheriff's Department, sat calmly behind the reception desk at the jail. He wasn't bothered by the demotion from patrol officer to desk jockey. Neither was he bothered by the sheriff's regular bouts of ranting. He maintained his professional demeanor on the job even when the sheriff occasionally pushed to try to find out more about what had happened the summer before. Deputy Mulligan kept his information and opinions firmly behind his teeth. "No good will come of anything from that place," he told Sheriff Wilson. "You have all the information you need. There's nobody to arrest or convict for anything. Deputy Diane Stanley already gave you a report." "Gave me a bunch of bullshit, you mean?" the sheriff scoffed. Deputy Mulligan just stared at him. "You will either believe it or not. I can't help you with anything else," he told him serenely, and shrugged. The sheriff's red face didn't move his veteran officer in the slightest. "We shall see about that," Sheriff Wilson blustered. "I've got connections. I've got my ways." "So you've said," Deputy Mulligan responded and nodded. "Feel free to use them. I'm just the receptionist these days, after all." The corner of his mouth twisted slightly in a half smile as the other man let out a throaty growl. The door to the sheriff's office slammed shut. Sheriff Wilson's heavy wooden chair creaked in protest when he plopped down behind his desk fuming. "I'll show you, smart ass." He picked up the headset of the black rotary dial phone on his desk and dialed a private number. "I need a warrant. You'll do that? Great, okay. I'll be there in an hour." He hung up the phone with satisfaction. Impeding an investigation, conspiracy, something will stick. He laughed. I'll get every one of you that was involved. In the open area in the next room, Deputy Mulligan didn't bother to let Sheriff Wilson know that the room's acoustics made it simple to hear what was said beyond the door. As the clock ticked to the end of his shift, he watched the sheriff leave and not return. When his shift relief arrived, Deputy Mulligan signed out and slid behind the wheel of his dark blue pickup truck. For a moment he paused with his key hovering over the ignition. Memories came flooding back into the deputy's mind. He shuddered while it played out for him again. The scent of rot and death filled his nose. He remembered the grabbing hands, and above all, an ancient evil so vile that a normal person would never imagine the horrors. He recalled his panicked reaction as he fired his service weapon with shame. It was a mistake that nearly killed the only non-human help they had received. He would have died if not for the intervention of the Coyote Pack and Diane's sheer unwavering bravery. Tears filled his blue eyes and came unbidden to his face. The only African-American cop on the force had more mettle than the rest of them combined. Then there was the lost children that Diane attempted to save. His knuckles were white from gripping the steering wheel. We couldn't save those kids. Dear God, I hope you have gathered them all to you, so they are at peace. Thank you for giving us help and sparing our lives, he prayed. But why couldn't you spare the littlest ones instead of this old Marine? He sobbed, broken-hearted. Let me be the clay and you the potter so I can make a difference in this world. Help me so that it becomes a better place, Lord Jesus. Use me. Amen. His hand went to the silver cross and fish he wore hidden under his uniform. For a moment he fancied that an invisible hand laid itself on his shoulder in blessing and comfort. It gave him the strength to dry his eyes and start his truck. He headed out onto Race Street and then stopped at the White Store's grocer around the corner. He left with a steak in a brown paper bag a few minutes later. Mulligan drove toward Midtown, where he knew Diane lived alone with the coyote these days. He smiled, thinking about them. He hoped Diane would be home. After a short drive, Deputy Mulligan was rewarded by the sight of Diane's car. An old blue car he didn't recognize also sat parked in the driveway of her small house. His face brightened to see she was home. The door opened to his touch. Oh, hey, Brett, I saw you coming. Diane welcomed him with a slight smile. To what do I owe the pleasure of your company today? I thought I'd stop by and bring our little coyote a present, Deputy Mulligan responded. Also to warn you that Wilson is on the warpath again. He handed her the paper bag with the steak. Well, come on in. You don't have to stand there in the door like a big lug. She motioned him to enter. Sheriff's on the warpath, huh? Why am I not surprised? When's he not on the warpath? Oh, hey, do you remember Professor John Holderman from the college? Diane nodded at the middle-aged Native American man smoking a pipe with a heady, sweet floral scent at her kitchen table. The man's eyes were slightly glassy as he extended his hand for the deputy to shake. How could I forget? It's a pleasure, sir. Deputy Mulligan responded and took his hand briefly. He sniffed. Is that honeysuckle and tobacco? That smells amazing. No, but you're close, Diane smiled. It's a subspecies of fireweed, a rare special blend of flowers. It comes from the Pacific Northwest. We're holding the medical issue at bay. Diane laughed, but her expression was serious. It's, shall we say, transformative in a good way. It only provides full effect by smoking it. Mulligan sniffed the air again. It smells good enough to eat. Ha! It kind of smells like cinnamon and chocolate, too. Diane grinned. Nah, you're smelling the cookies in the oven, she said. Chocolate chip and snickerdoodles will be done soon. I'm making plenty. You can have some to take home with you. You look a lot better than when I saw you last. The professor slid the pipe to the side of his mouth and spoke around it. Wisps of smoke rose around his face. Tell me, are there any lasting effects from your injuries? He asked the deputy and looked him up and down.
Some stiffness in my left leg is about it. Overall, I'd say I got out unscathed compared to some of the others in that hell fight,
Deputy Mulligan told him. You have been blessed by the Great Spirit with life. Your work here is not done, the professor said.
That I have,
the deputy agreed. He noted the neatness of the old Indian's clothing and the sleek, simple braid of his salt and pepper hair. He'd aged. Deputy Mulligan realized, but he still looked strong and none the worse for wear.
You look pretty good yourself, and I'm as gorgeous as always. One of these days, I might get a summer tan as dark as hers,
he joked and put his arm around her.
Now, Brett Mulligan, you'd have to spend your whole summer in a tanning bed, and you'd still be red, not black. You a pale face.
She poked his ribs, and he let go of her with an oof.
Probably true,
the deputy acknowledged, grinning and rubbing his side. He grabbed a chair, turned it around backward, and sat down with his arms propped up. Deputy Mulligan's expression turned grim. He took a deep breath and sighed.
In all seriousness, Diane, Wilson has something up his sleeve. Today I heard him calling in some favors and getting warrants. You know the judge will give him whatever he wants and not ask questions.
He shook his head thoughtfully.
He's like a dog with a bone refusing to bury it.
Dan rolled her eyes at her guest. For what? When does Wilson investigate anything for real himself?
He doesn't. Just sends his detectives out into the field unless there's something that makes him look good and will show up in Kingston's newspaper. We need somebody who would do better than that.
Mulligan suddenly sat erect in the chair.
When's the next election comes up, Diane? Why don't you run for sheriff? We need somebody with some integrity and talent at the helm.
He looked at the professor, who was sitting silently, still smoking. The professor's eyes were half closed. Deputy Mulligan wasn't fooled. He knew his friend was watching and listening.
Shoo! I don't think people ready for a black woman as sheriff in this county, Diane responded, and I don't want it. I'm beginning to enjoy my freedom. Since I'm with Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency and the Park Service, I'm now technically state police. Still, what I have to concern myself with is simpler. A few fishing license violations, wildlife rehab, and presentations. Then there's patrolling the state park to keep an eye out for poachers or rednecks spotlighting deer. Life's better.
Diane gestured at the deputy. There are other people with know-how and aesthetics on the full sides me, though. What about you? Why don't you run? You got the experience.
I know I can do the job, Deputy Mulligan responded, but I don't want it either. Anybody honest will face the same mentality that took Sheriff Buford Puser out some few years back. It will take a while to clean up the bad element of the good old boy network, and I got kids. I'm not going to risk them in a local war.
The professor spoke up. Your intentions are in the right place, but you shouldn't ask her to do something you aren't willing to tackle yourself. He pointed the mouthpiece of his pipe at the deputy. Leadership is something you both possess. You just have to decide where your priorities lie. Notice the same thing you're criticizing the current sheriff for is your excuse not to act. Yes? Maybe you are correct, but it does no good if you don't learn from it. He looked straight at Deputy Mulligan. Mulligan squirmed a little in his seat under the withering gaze.
I see what you're saying. I will think about it. I heard Clower may run. I'd be running against him if I do.
He was relieved when Professor Holderman nodded, satisfied. He looked at his watch, shook his wrist, and tapped the timepiece with a frown. I should probably go. My wife will have dinner on and be wondering when I'm going to come eat it, he said. Don't keep the lady waiting, the professor told him with a smile, and dismissed him with another wave of his pipe. Deputy Mulligan rose and stuck his hand out. It was good to see you again, John. I owe my life to you guys as well as God's providence. If you need anything, you name it. I'll be there. The professor took his hand firmly for a moment, sealing the offer. Deputy Brett Mulligan was shown out holding a bag of fresh cookies and sent on his way. He left satisfied that his message was received. Diane was no stranger to investigation or a stakeout. She noticed the unmarked navy blue SUV with tinted windows which seemed to always show up over the next several days. Diane shook her head and watched them watching her. Since Deputy Mulligan's warning, she remained alert, knowing that the situation would have to result in a confrontation eventually. After the fifth traffic stop over minor or made-up charges by local city and county police officers, Diane steeled herself and kept a tight grip on her steering wheel. Her jaw hurt from gritting her teeth in anger. The officer approached her car with his hand on his pistol. His uniform labeled him as Officer Bennett. Ma'am, do you know why I pulled you over? A slight smile turned his lips up as he attempted to look pleasant. No, Mark, I don't, she said tightly. I'm not doing anything wrong, and you are impeding my progress. So why don't you tell me what the problem is this time? We have worked together at county, so why don't you come straight up with it? Why the harassment? Is it some plan the sheriff has concocted to get even with me for quitting? Or is my crime now being the wrong skin color and driving through town? You have a headlight out, he grinned at her. I need to see your license and registration. Diane was shocked. What? It's a bright day, and there's no way you'd know if it worked or not. Clearly I don't have my headlights on, as there is no need. Ma'am, your license and registration, please, the officer insisted with a deadpan tone. Of all the... Diane started. Fine. I'm going to reach in my console where my service weapon is and get my wallet, she told him. Do you have a carry permit for that weapon? The officer asked. If so, I need to see that too. Excuse me. Officer, do you not see this uniform and badge I'm wearing? Of course I have a permit. We've been out at the gun range together qualifying. Have you lost your marbles? Get out of your car, the officer told her. I'm fine right where I am. Now, are you going to write me a ticket or just keep on harassing me? Because if you are, I will call my boss up in Morgan County so he can find out why. In fact, I think I'll do that as soon as I get home. You know I'm from Morgan County. Up there, we don't allow your kind. You ain't nothing but trouble. Ah, thank you for answering my question. Finally. It's 'cause I'm driving black that you pulled me over. She reached into her console and pulled out her wallet to find a gun pointed in her face. She raised her hands to show she wasn't holding a weapon. Now get out of the car. The officer sneered. Diane started to comply and was gratified to see a state trooper vehicle pull in. Officer Bennett turned and saw the trooper's car. He blanched with a deer in the headlight look when he realized that the other responding officer was also black. He was well-muscled, a head taller, and outweighed Bennett by about a fourth. I'm Trooper Collins. I saw you had this fine lady pulled over, and I thought you might need some help, he said. What's the problem? Me and Stanley here were just having a discussion, Officer Bennett said. There's not a problem. Well, since you got a gun in her face, I'd say then that's a problem. Officer, why did you pull her over? She has a headlight out, Officer Bennett said. What? The state trooper asked incredulously with a frown. She has a headlight out, Officer Bennett sneered as he repeated himself. I know what you said. She's driving legally. It's a bright, sunshiny day. Trooper Collins glared. Put your service weapon away and act like a professional, he told Officer Bennett. Miss, I know you're legal, but I'd like to know who you are. Would you kindly let me see your license? I'd be glad to, Diane said. I'm Diane Stanley with TWRA Wildlife Rehab and State Park Service. She handed him her license. I'm headed up there now. We have some school kids coming for a presentation on conservation. I've got some animals that I do live demonstrations with. Do you have them with you? He craned his neck to see inside the car. No, they are at the center in comfortable, familiar surroundings. I don't transport any wild animal just before they need to be on their best behavior. It's stressful for them to be moved, Diane answered. No snakes or small animals I can see, he laughed. I'm afraid of snakes ever since my brother put a bull snake in the bathtub with me when I was a kid, he said. None of those either, Diane smiled. Good, good. Would you mind, Miss Diane, to flip your headlights on real quick so I can examine their working status? Trooper Collins asked respectfully. Sure. She reached for her dashboard and flipped her lights on. Just as I thought, Trooper Collins said under his breath. They work just fine. Ma'am, here's your license back. You are free to go, he said loudly. Officer Bennett had gone to his patrol car and was pulling out. But just between you and me, I'm going to report this incident. We have a new boss and a new affirmative action plan in place. He leaned closer. What he just did will get him fired. Different jurisdiction, so I'm not clear on how that works. But if it did, maybe that will improve things a bit, she said. I ain't walking on eggshells every time I leave for work or to go to the grocery store. We don't have to involve ourselves in local politics, he said. We just have to know who to drop the information to. Let me know if you have any more problems. This is my new territory assignment at the Department of Motor Vehicles, based out of Rockwood. It's temporary while they decide if they want to move it to a new location or build onto the existing building and add a Tennessee Highway Patrol office. That place? Nah, that building is way too small, and there's not any room to expand unless they buy up surrounding properties, tear it all down, and start new, Diane said. It's not big enough for a good drive and testing center, much less anything additional. I agree with you, he nodded, tapped her car door, and turned to go. I won't keep you any longer. I'll be seeing you around. You have a good afternoon, miss. Trooper Collins bade Diane farewell. Diane pulled away and onto the road with mixed feelings in her heart. Well, she was gratified by a fellow officer showing up and disrupting what she felt had been a potentially disastrous encounter. She was seething with disappointment and rage. Tears of anger soaked her face. Diane pounded her steering wheel. She found herself grateful that Crossville, as a metropolitan city, was more liberal than the rednecks close by across the county line. Officer Bennett had not been kidding. Morgan County was 100% white, and she had heard stories. They would let blacks move through and be gone, but nobody stayed after sundown if they had any sense. She shook her head sadly and pulled herself together when she got to the Wildlife Rehab Center. Diane decided to focus on the positive part of her day and leave anything else for later. If she walked in upset, it would affect her job. The dashboard lights illuminated Sheriff Wilson's face as his instructions crackled over the radio late in the evening. These were the casual-sounding ones. He had dealt with the important stuff earlier, and his expression was a mask of calm satisfaction. He waited at the boat ramp where the Clinch and Emery River meet across the Kingston steam plant for his special team. He didn't have to wait long after his arrival. Center's Ferry was closed for the day, so Sheriff Wilson felt gratified to note that nobody was around except for a couple of unmanned pickup trucks with boat trailers attached. He looked around the few minutes he waited for the others. Birds circled over the mostly placid lake. Dotting the surface, rings of ripples marked where bass chased bait fish. Pairs of ducks swam close to the shore, occasionally diving under the water for food. The green and white painted ferry with its 8-car pontoon barge was docked just around the curve of the shoreline. The ferry was quiet except for the sound of lapping water, where it bubbled in the shallow wake of passing boats. Sheriff Wilson regarded it with annoyance. It broke down so often it barely worked 3 or 4 days out of any given week. County maintenance would need to be called again, he noticed. The barge was listing to the side and taking on water where the pontoon dug the shore every time it stopped. The sheriff made a mental note to call for it to be fixed the following day. Quiet engine sounds pulled his attention back to matters at hand, so he dismissed the problem of the ferry. 3 unmarked black Mercedes with blacked-out tinted windows slid smoothly in beside him. This was the team nobody in Roane County wanted about. Too many officers in both city and county were honest, upstanding citizens and might report their activities to state or federal authorities. He pressed his lips together as Officer Mulligan's face showed up in his mind's eye.
"I'll deal with you later," he told the image. "I should just fire you and chase you out of the county," he chuckled quietly. "I need people that do what they're told."
The sheriff rolled his windows down, waved his hand in a circular motion, and pointed.
"Let's go."
Less than 10 minutes later, they had Diane's house surrounded. And that is finally the end of Chapter 9. Well, this has been a much longer stream than normal, so I hope you guys have enjoyed it. We've made it, a little over 3 hours now. So looking back, let's see. Poor Vincent. He had the predilection, but would not have necessarily acted without a demon getting involved. But such a thing was a thing. All right, everybody. Well, if you missed any of our reading tonight or any of the readings so far, they are all available on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SirArminius. They are also available on the Rumble channel. I have no idea the address. Just go search for Spear of Destiny and you will find it. I hope you enjoyed the reading tonight and that the story continues to tantalize you. Remember, if you have missed any of it, you could go watch the videos, or you could always go buy the book and read it for yourself. You are always welcome to do so. Thank you all so much for being here with me tonight. The greatest gift that you can give me as a streamer is a gift of your time. And I appreciate that you guys gave me the gift of yours this evening, whether it was for 5 minutes or the full 3 hours and 5 minutes. Thank you. So much appreciated. Again, make sure you get out there and support the author. I could not do what I do if they didn't do what they do. And if you're enjoying it, go buy the book. Available on Amazon. I will be back again on Tuesday where we will continue in Chapter 10. Probably about a corrupt sheriff hassling a poor group of people. It ain't right. Just ain't right. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend ahead. Thank you so much. And see you soon. Good night.